What are everyday things that made sense 15 years ago but confuse kids today? Story 1. File systems. A lot of college grads or college interns apparently have no idea how a file system works. Unfortunately, it's true. I'm in a college where a bunch of my peeps are from 2005 and 2006, and most of them don't even know about Control+C or Control+V. These people have grown up on smartphones. I'm not even that much older, 2004, and I still feel old because they just don't know how to use a computer. Okay, just to be clear on how absolutely wild this is, we're here for computer science degrees. I once worked with an attorney in the twilight of her career. She was many things: a trailblazer, one of the first female attorneys in the state, an absolute battle-axe bitch. See that first accolade and note that she'd run out of willingness to put up with anyone's crap decades earlier, and above all else, a very, very good attorney. She'd been practicing law in the days of legal pads, carbon paper, and typewriters. She'd been there when word processors first entered the game, when they became computers, and the whole rise of technology in the profession. So there she was, working on some problem or another, and I, an IT person, was helping her, Control+V and V while sitting at her computer, and she was like, "Wait, what the hell did you just do?" "Copied and pasted," I said, carrying on with the task at hand. "How?" Turns out she'd been around since computers, and at some point along the way she learned how to use the context menu copy and paste, but had never come across the keyboard shortcuts to do the same. This is not the silliest example I've come across, but it is illustrative. She was very good at her job, after all, absolutely brilliant, and very much a person who worked very hard to be the best she could be at her job, and she just never encountered the concept. A few weeks later, I was in her office for some other issue, and she was still so thrilled by the slight time savings offered by the keyboard shortcuts as to be nearly gushing. Seems she'd looked up a whole mess of them and was breezing through her work with even better efficiency than before, which I suppose means Mr. Monroe's philosophy is right when it comes to those things that everybody knows. That's moderately concerning. If you use computers even to a mild degree, you should understand file systems even at a basic level. I think there was a certain critical point in, let's say, the late 90s or early 2000s where desktop computers were becoming ubiquitous and everyone had to understand the basics of how to find a document and stuff. Then, smartphones and tablets came onto the scene, and all that file management became abstracted away from the user, resulting in a whole generation of people who grew up on those devices not knowing the first thing about what's going on under the hood. Even before smartphones, you started seeing PC apps start trying to adopt libraries, particularly music services like iTunes. I always hated this because I had my MP3 folders organized exactly how I wanted them. Then once smartphones came around, they were organized around this sort of model by default. Hide the file system from the user, and organize everything into searchable libraries. True. Also doesn't help that on phones, it's very well hidden, and on modern Windows/Macs, it is all about recent files and common directories. Windows, the old path text box, is stylized now. If you don't know you can click on it, you never would. In Windows, they overhauled the right-click menu. You can't create a file with this, and delete became an icon. The old one still shows up when clicking Show More options. Some of the younger people even find it weird that the menu is at the bottom, Windows, or top, Mac. Since there are a lot of websites, the menu is on the left. Story 2. I think I'm just becoming a grumpy old woman, but social awareness, like blocking the whole sidewalk, speakerphones in public, that kind of thing. It's always been a problem, but I feel like the pandemic stunted an entire generation's social growth, and they're just oblivious to their effect on others in any given space. It's stunningly annoying. Yes, it has definitely gotten worse after the pandemic. People walking slowly together, blocking entire sidewalks, diagonal walkers who keep moving left and right, so you need turn signals to figure out what the hell they're doing, people who just abruptly stop, people blocking choke points and narrow spaces. Yesterday I was trying to pull out of my driveway and couldn't because the neighbor parked their massive truck in the middle of the street to run into their house and grab something. Just completely blocking the road. Wasn't a quick thing either, took them 5 minutes, and when they came out I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And they had the audacity to say, "What? It was 5 minutes, chill out." They have a driveway. They could have pulled back into their driveway, but decided the middle of the street was better because it saved them 0.5 seconds and made the rest of us wait 5 minutes. It's always a bit controversial when I say this, but in my opinion, we went a little too far with the violence is always wrong stuff. I'm certainly not saying people should be allowed to go around attacking people for no reason, but for a good portion of human history there was behavior deemed worthy of a punch in the nose. Now that threat has been removed, it's largely become a free-for-all to be as obnoxious as possible. I can appreciate there's a gray area between what is and isn't worth a punch in the nose, but I think that keeps people in line. You don't want to be too much of an asshole in public because you don't want to get punched, and you don't want to throw punches over anything because that might get you arrested. It's not perfect, but I think it's better than the status quo. In my experience working in a grocery store, the older generations were usually the ones oblivious to how much space they were taking up. I remember people look like they're intentionally blocking as much as they can with the cart, by moving it sideways so the long side is perpendicular to the aisle. And when I needed to walk by, they super nicely say I didn't even realize. Like, dude, you had 3 people bump into you trying to get by. So funny and so infuriating. I recently joined Costco, and I already never want to go back. If I'm at all at risk for an aneurysm, that place just might be fatal to me. People stop dead in the middle of the aisles, people stop to chat at the entrances to the aisles, walking away and leaving their cart blocking the above. Awareness that they are blocking someone or even being asked, "Pardon me, just trying to get past you," has no apparent impact on the above. Multiple people just walked into me, not brushing past or bumping, as happens in crowds, but not looking in the direction they're walking or having their nose in their phone and plowing into me. I narrowly avoided being rammed by overfull carts several times for the same reason. Each of these is usually a minor annoyance, but when they occur one after the other, dozens or hundreds of times, it didn't help that the person with me was as guilty as anyone else about this. It may be a habit from the culture she grew up in, and we've talked often in the past about how I get frustrated by what I see as casual discourtesy. Costco just seems to have turned her obliviousness to those around her up to 11. Story 3. Having a dedicated device for listening to music, like iPods or Walkmans. I'm still holding on to the last generation of iPod Nano as my music player because I don't like how the GPS lowers the volume to say the next direction. I wish there was a way to make it just quieter than the music and have both sounds play at the same time. Not only for listening to music, before smartphones became established and mature in the early 2010s, you had dedicated devices for everything. Of course, even in the 2000s, a lot of phones already included some features for the below, but they often were not convenient to use or so crappy that they were not really a replacement for a dedicated device. Music, MP3 player like an iPod. Taking pictures, compact camera. Taking videos, camcorder. Navigation, GPS navigation device. Phone calls, your actual mobile phone. Receiving text messages, mostly phones, but in some situations actually a dedicated pager. Calendar or address book, an actual book, made out of paper in your pocket. Mobile gaming, handheld console like a Game Boy or a Nintendo DS. Flashlight, an actual physical flashlight. Calculator, also a dedicated device. It's really amazing how many devices are unified in a modern smartphone. Story 4. Remembering phone numbers of friends and family. Even to this day, I can still remember some of my friends' numbers from over 15 years ago. As someone who works in the ER, memorize people's phone numbers, because if you are in an accident and are badly injured, EMS is not going to stop to look for your phone and you'll wind up in a trauma bay with them asking for the next of kin info and have no idea how to contact anyone you love. I've had the same number since 2000, like when Verizon was still 9X. Then I moved to Canada in 2022 and got a second line for Canada and had to learn a whole new number. It was way harder than expected. I know very few numbers by heart, not even my husband's numbers. I can still remember my mom and dad's cell numbers who passed in 2013, so 11 years. My mom's old direct work number, house I grew up in, my grandma's from when I was a kid, my best friend passed away several years ago, but I would dial him, not use the phone book. A lot of these are ones I've not used in over a decade, but still there. Weird. Story 5. Why is the save button icon a floppy disk? Somewhat related, the Enter key used to have an arrow that pointed down and to the left because it was the carriage return key on typewriters that moved you down one line and back to the start. Calling it the return key has been phased out for the most part over the last 15 years. Not saying you are, or aren't one of them, but most people saying this don't know why it's a floppy disk instead of a hard drive either. And it's simply because they're not old enough to have used computers with no hard drive, and 2 floppy disks, A and B, which is why we use C even to this day for the hard drive. One for the OS software, and another for your files. Story 6. Paper maps, and how to use them. Navigation in general. If you're using Google Maps, just go investigate the route ahead of time. See where it's taking you and why it may have chosen that path over alternatives. If you see 6 left and right turns, presumably with stop signs or traffic lights towards the end of your route, maybe there's a route that just has 1 turn instead. It may be 2 minutes longer, but it's far less work. Far fewer details you need to focus on. I'm a surveyor and love maps. I have always loved geography and cartography. The only way I can motivate my sons, 14 and 12, to learn geography is by the location of sports teams, i.e. this team is in this division because they're close to these other teams geographically. My argument kind of fell apart when we got to the Dallas Cowboys being in the NFC East. The other day I had to use the Seattle Seahawks as the vehicle to teach them what the Pacific Northwest was. I once had a delivery driver come up to me in a panic because he was lost and time was running out on his delivery. I asked him if he had a map and he said no. I told him to pull out his phone and launch an app called Google Maps, and he's like, yeah, that's what I'm using. I'm like, dude, that's a map. I looked at it and he was like, it keeps telling me to go that way, but then when I go that way, it tells me to go this way. I asked him if he'd actually looked at it and he said he didn't know how it worked. I showed him that the dot marked on his location and the text was the names of the streets. I showed him where the signs that labeled the streets were and how he could use that to confirm if the map was accurate. His compass was off. I could see the building from where we were standing. Google Maps was confused because he had it set to driving, but he was on a bicycle on the wrong side of the street. So it kept telling him to turn the car around. But he just needed to cross the street and turn a corner and the building was right there. Even after I explained this to him and pointed at the building, he still seemed a bit confused. Maybe it was just his personality, but when I asked him if he was lost, he told me, no, I just don't know where I am or where I'm going, and I'm like, yeah, that's called being lost. Story 7. File structures. Because of cloud storage, kids in high school have no idea how file organization, folders, naming work, which leads to issues with searching for what you need specifically on a computer. Phones and tablets just throw files at you. We had specific folders for GCSE coursework for them and would spend ages explaining how to save in a particular spot, and a term later would hear "miss my work disappeared" to find it in their personal docs. As a teacher and a parent of a 13-year-old, I would say just basic computer skills in general. People my age and those who grew up in the 2000s really had to learn on the fly and by figuring things out as new technology became available. Part of it is how iPads/iPhones have a very different type of user interface than traditional computers. I notice kids do not know how to type correctly and need constant reminders on how to format and save various types of documents and projects. This year, my son's in a coding class and the teacher has really incentivized using a typing program. I have seen a massive improvement in his overall computer skills, but that's because he's in a class where many of the skills have been taught explicitly. God, I miss the days when the average PC user wasn't totally clueless. The number of times I get called a computer genius for doing something as basic as alt-tabbing or opening the options/preferences menu on a program. Not to mention the completely baffled look people give me when I speed type without looking at the keyboard and don't make a mistake or fix it without even looking at it. I don't even consider myself a computer whiz. I can't program, I can barely do HTML, and while I know how to build my own computer, I'd rather just buy a pre-built one and not worry about it. I can't do anything hardware related, and I'm a tech whiz at work because I click random crap to see what happens. I'm naturally curious, but also I was raised in Eastern Europe. We had potatoes, old PCs, and school gyms on the weekend filled with contraband games you needed to crack. My pirated Sims had no build mode and I had to figure this out, so I learned very quickly that clicking random bits and experimenting is not that dramatic as long as I don't touch the system files. I did get an email once from the IT people to not click certain random crap, but it was for a good reason and I fully agree with them. I teach middle school media, and I swear half of the class is teaching digital file management, how to name, what the difference is between on disk, in a hard drive, and uploaded into a cloud, etc., etc. No, you can't just mail that 6 GB video to your school email, you have to upload it. No, we can't just live stream our episode on TikTok. I call it tickety talk. Drives them crazy. Honestly, kids who have a basic concept of file nomenclature, how to nest relevant folders, etc., have a huge advantage over their peers, even if it's at a disadvantage compared to the workforce. I don't know, I was in school 15 years ago and I remember the same thing happening in my IT classes. I think there's been some decline. It's genuinely harder to figure out the file system in Windows 11 than it was in XP. It's too abstracted. But also, part of that is that the techie kids who know all this stuff are the ones on Reddit saying that obviously everyone knows this, while completely forgetting all the other kids in their IT class who couldn't work out file structures 15 years ago either. They were there, I promise. Story 8. What does the sound of a busy signal mean? Yes, I worked with a woman who thought a client's phone was broken because she called it and it kept going beep, 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 beep. The kicker is, she was older than me and I grew up with landlines, so I would have thought she would have known what it was. Apparently she had never heard of it. The inverse of this is that boomers never learned that the ring they hear when calling someone is unrelated to the number of rings that the recipient hears. My dad constantly says, "Well, I let it ring 10 times," when I don't answer, whereas I only heard it ring 3 times before he hung up. If it had rang more than that, it would have hit my voicemail. You know, I've always wondered about this. I've noticed some people get more rings than others, sometimes to a significant amount, and some business lines simply never stop ringing. But then my own phone will sometimes take a moment before I hear the ring start when I make a call, so it at least has something to do with the actual call being placed. I wondered this too, and then I got a job in telecoms. I might be getting some minor details wrong because the inner workings of phone calls are absurd and voice engineers are on another level. TLDR, there's no direct correlation between the number of rings and the length of time on a call before moving on. It's a literal setting that you can change for how long you want your phone to ring in seconds, and the number of rings you hear waiting for the far end to pick up is slightly varied because it corresponds to an actual attempt at reaching out to the far end. This also means that an attempt at reaching the far end can be interrupted by the timer on the far end, timing out mid-attempt/mid-ring, which you've probably heard quite a bit on the last ring. Every tone you hear on a phone at one point was the actual mechanism for whatever that tone was for, which is why a whistle from a cereal box could get you free calls at a payphone if you knew the right tones to play. Those sounds still exist because we know what they mean by now and we're used to it. I don't know how this works for analog phones, so-called POTS lines, literally plain old telephone system. The terminology for phone stuff is kind of funny because it's ancient and very simple because the tech itself is relatively simple. I'm sure there are other nuances to this that I wouldn't know about too. Story 9. Telling time on an analog clock, apparently. We get new workers every year and it's entertaining to watch the young ones try and work out the time on the clock. It's not that they don't know, it's that they have no practice at it. So it takes them a moment to figure it out. Sometimes wrong. Ironically, I'm personally experiencing this as well. I'm 27 and I grew up with an analog clock and I had a watch, analog as well, for a decade, so I could read it pretty easily. I couldn't anymore. Of course, I did not forget how to read it, but it's just not as fast and intuitive as it used to be. For example, when I'm cooking and need to check my watch real quick to set a mental timer for, say, 7 minutes, that'll take me like 10 seconds to figure out, when it shouldn't even take more than 1 second. It'll take like 5 seconds for me to have an initial answer, and I'd think I got it, but immediately after I'd be like, but am I sure? And double take. It's pretty annoying and frustrating, especially when I know I could do better. I think I'm an outlier for my generation, but I was born in 1997, so we grew up with a lot of analog stuff still, but new digital tech came out every other day. And I personally struggle with an analog clock as well. I can read it, but unless it's one of the 4/4 of an hour, it doesn't come instantly. I usually need to look for a minute and do a little mental counting. I can imagine kids younger than me can't even do that much. Then again though, this is one of those things that doesn't really seem to matter in the grand scheme of things. In my opinion, analog clocks are essentially rendered obsolete. The only reason to use one anymore is if you prefer the aesthetic, but at that point, can you really blame new generations for not being able to read it? It's as if people were upset that a kid doesn't know how to use an abacus over a calculator. Sort of an extreme example, but you get my point. Story 10. My kids are very confused about the order in which technologies appeared. They don't really understand that computers came long before the internet, and that forms of the internet came long before people thought they did, like dial-up AOL in 1989. That's true for every generation. Really, it's not like your generation could give an accurate timeline of when telegrams, telephones, and radio were invented. Most people don't have much reason to know about the history of technology made before they were born. I'm gonna disagree. When did most people get their first PC? In the Windows 3.1 era, like 1993? I remember having the internet around 94. PCs with color screens weren't just popular without the internet for any real length of time. By Windows 95, everyone had both AOL and the internet. We're talking just the late 80s to early 90s when anyone had a home computer without internet, and it was available then. Story 11. You shouldn't bring your parents to a job interview. I'm a small business owner, but I've had 2 applicants show up with a parent for interviews. That's not a lot, but it's 2 more times than it ever should have happened. Interviews have gotten very bad though. I still think all that social media is ruining the world stuff is silly, but an entire generation that has mostly interacted with each other through technology is entering the workspace, and they just don't have any of the soft skills needed to interact in the workplace. Forget minor spelling mistakes, I get resumes that have 0 punctuation or capital letters, and 1/3 of the words are abbreviated. It's insane. We still only have physical paper applications here, and honestly I prefer it. We don't really judge them too much based on how they fill it out, but it's clear they have no idea what they are doing, and I gotta say the handwriting is atrocious. I get a lot of them filled out on pencil as well, but I give that a pass. Most important for us is how they interact with customers. The hardest part of that for them seems to be getting used to looking at people when they are speaking and speaking loud enough for others to hear. Had this exact conversation with someone over the weekend. She couldn't understand why it was a problem or how changing laws and social standards could mean something you post today that's perfectly acceptable might be illegal or highly offensive in a few decades' time, and could come back to haunt you. Ye old, well, I've got nothing to hide, so who cares defense. Then went on to talk about the things we did as kids that are illegal now or would get you in trouble. So thank goodness social media, etc. didn't exist back then. Her inability to connect those 2 statements to understand why it's problematic was astounding. Story 12. Handing a paper into university on paper. I talk to university students now, all they hand in their papers online. Back when I was going in the mid-2000s, everything was handed in on paper. TA here, I welcome the digital-only submissions. Gone are the days when I had to crack open a hieroglyphics dictionary to read someone's atrocious handwriting. Now the worst thing I have to read is someone who can't be arsed to click the spell check button, or someone who cannot form 2 coherent sentences together, but at least I can read it. I welcome digital only. My dad is a teacher, and one of his most frequent difficulties is kids who don't turn in their work. And the parents accuse him of losing the homework. Never mind that, the other 30 kids' homework was there, just this student's homework somehow disappeared from the pile, and then the principal gets involved because the parents escalate. The principal has to kiss their ass and apologize, etc., etc. And it's every single class, and there's at least 1 or 2 of these kids and their parents. Story 13. Sometimes people would lose their cool in public. We just never knew about it because not everyone had a smartphone in their hands at all times. Now, one person's bad day can become a public spectacle that follows them for the rest of their lives. Related to this, I think forgiveness might be a rarer quality today. The consequences of people's ignorant, idiotic, hateful opinions have destroyed any chance for a real future. The very worst of our impulses is being deliberately and dramatically magnified and shoved back down our psychological throats, foie gras style, which increases those impulses exponentially in a feedback loop. All of this is by deliberate design to make obscenely rich people even richer. The election was a final nail. We now exist in a liberal, capitalist, plutocratic oligarchy. I don't expect someone to have 12 years of political science to understand how screwed we are, but I'm well past trying to wrangle a Mr. Rogers moment of forgiveness. Our healthcare system is actively killing people for profit. Actual Nazis are now in power, and women and queer people are being legislatively hunted for cruel conservative sport. I'm pretty freaking far past whoopsie doodles, all is forgiven. The wave of boomers and crappy Gen Xers being in shock at their adult children going no contact and denying future contact with grandchildren is part of the find out stage. The only hope at this point is to wait for these regressive crap heels to die. Although, on the flip side, a lot of prima donnas and outright assholes have been raising their voices and threatening to make a scene for too long in order to get what they want. Now they can act the fool if they want to, but they best be prepared for repercussions. You can't just throw your food at the waitstaff anymore without getting cancelled and labeled as a popular woman's name from the 60s. Like the poor bastard behind Coney 2012. He was a decent guy just trying to raise awareness and force the international community to come down on Coney. What happened, kind of? But the public scrutiny and media interviews caused him to have a mental break in downtown LA. Now he's mostly known as the scammer behind Coney 2012, was caught naked and touching himself in downtown LA. The dude was in a psych ward for 2 weeks. Story 14. I'm a teacher and the kids think it is some mythological world where children leave the house, go on adventures, and return home before the streetlights go up. I once explained to my high school students that when I was their age, I was responsible for taking my younger brother to practice/scouts and starting the dinner after school. They all had helicopter parents, and the idea that I would be alone and in charge daily was so foreign to them. I worry this one is really going to screw these kids up as adults. I grew up in the 90s, and I and all my friends from elementary school on had the freedom to go out all day, bike around, and explore. Sure, we sometimes got up to mischief, but nothing serious. Nobody thought anything about it. I worry that people who grow up without this sort of freedom will become adults who have no independence and also be some sort of spineless weirdos. Story 15. Counting change. It's both hilarious and frustrating watching my new hires struggle to count a $200 cash drawer. They do okay with the bills, but when they get to the coins... Recently, I made a purchase, and it was an amount of $10.57. I gave the person a 20 and a 1. I had to calmly explain that they could give me back either 10 or 2 5s plus coins amounting to 43 cents. Instead of a bunch of 1s or a 5, 4 1s and then coins amounting to 43 cents. I work at a store, and usually there are a lot of elderly who don't know how to use card readers, but then I met younger people who don't know how to use cash. The first time it happened, I told them their total and they just handed me a whole bunch of cash. And I just counted it and returned a majority of it back to them, saying they handed me the wrong amount, and they said, "Oh, I don't know how these things are supposed to work." To say I was shocked was an understatement. Those that do count it out get confused when I give them change. And here's me one day processing card transactions with a carbon copy machine when the biggest credit merchant in our country had a nationwide network outage. This not only meant that debit machines were out of commission until it got back online, but any store whose internet POS system was baked into the debit network couldn't process any sales, because their POS would have to communicate with the debit system. It was cash only, and you couldn't even go to a bank to withdraw cash if you were short because their systems also relied on that same network. The jewelry kiosk I managed at the time, however, was so old that the ancient DOS screen POS wasn't integrated with the debit machine. So this meant I could actually process debit/credit transactions within the computer and manually enter in all the debit/credit transactions separately the next day when the network was back up. No risk to me because the customer had already paid and it was rung up in the computer as a sale. I just needed to finalize it on the debit machine to produce a copy of the receipt. That meant for the first time in literal decades, my customers got an actual handwritten receipt from an old-school transaction ledger. And that was before I amazed them with knowing how to use the carbon copy machine, LOL. Some of our older customers were so tickled and amazed that a younger person not only knew how to process transactions by hand, but actually knew what a carbon copy machine was. Everyone had their minds blown that day. And for any younger customer, you'd swear I was doing witchcraft before their eyes. The head office was blown away when they found out what I did because I was the only store in the region able to process debit/credit transactions that day. They praised my resourcefulness but begged me not to do it again without prior approval, lol. I'm just glad I remembered our store had one buried deep in the back of a drawer with the receipt book that probably the first time anyone has touched it in at least 30 years. Story 16. Thinking. The ability to be bored. Context. I'm 38, and my 21-year-old brother-in-law is living with us. Regarding a lot of the things on this post, I definitely notice or maybe get frustrated with him in an eye roll and chuckle to myself kind of way, but his inability to be bored or find a non-electronic activity actually bothers me. Our power went out last week due to that big PNW windstorm, and it was the worst thing that could have possibly happened to him. The worst part about this is that I've noticed this change in myself. I used to get excited to read a book, and now there's some sort of executive function hurdle I have to overcome to get myself to read for fun. Even when I'm cooking or whatever, I'll throw on a YouTube video or podcast, so I'm less frequently just alone with my thoughts. I think that's why it bothers me so much when I see it in him, because I've started to lose that ability myself. Story 17. Cash. We were away for the weekend last year, had an all-day drinking session, and at around 9 p.m. went to a chippy. I was served by a young lass, maybe 17 years old. My order came to $13.40. To avoid a pocket full of change, I gave the girl $23.40 to get a £10 note in return. Well, it was like I had completely fried her brain. She just stood there staring at the money in her open hands for far too long. I said, "I just need a tenner change." Nope, it didn't help. She just couldn't fathom what the hell was going on. Eventually, her greasy gaffer reached over her shoulder, pressed the button on the till, and pulled a tenner out. This happened to me last year. The girl was 5 years older than me. I'm 33, and the total was $8.04, so I gave her $20. She already rang it into the till. I said, "Oh shoot, I have 4 cents. Then I literally fried her brain. "Okay, so just give me 12 back. It's cash. Your till will still be on. It's cash. Just trust me. I don't want $11.96. I want $12. $11.96 plus 4 cents equals $12. Trying to explain that was honestly impossible. The manager finally stepped in and it was fine, but I'm like, dude, you can't even add 4 cents? Jeez. Also, I think if the till is off by 4 cents at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. Starbucks, by the way. Source, food industry since I was 15.
What's that one disgusting thing that everybody except you seems to like? Pictures with babies being gross, like with spaghetti all over their faces and that sort of thing. I do not get the appeal and doubt I ever will. I was at the airport last week, and where I was queuing to board the plane, there was a long poster. I think it was for ING Bank, and it was like a collage of different life moments. People getting married, playing at a park, graduating, people hugging, etc. The very last picture was a baby absolutely covered in spaghetti, all over his head and torso, and his sister, about 3 years old, also covered in spaghetti and rubbing it into his hair. Made me gag a little, like all I could think was how gross and annoying that would be to clean up, and how the kid would stink of spaghetti and drool. One of my work colleagues, he's the biggest douchebag and poser ever, but except me, everyone seems to like him. Don't you hate that? I've known a few people that were absolute rotten assholes, yet they seem to have so many people love them. It makes me feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. The people who I've known like that are extremely outgoing and liven up parties. So instead of seeing them for the douchebags that they are, everybody loves them because they're fun-wasted or totally unpredictable in crazy ways. Check out Chet! He's doing headstands on the pool table and chugging drink through his nose while singing "It's the End of the World as We Know It." Dude's dated 9 women in the last year, and 3 of them have restraining orders. One dropped out of college to move back home and get away from him. Oh, come on, man, why you gotta be like that? Chet's hilarious! Chet! Those mukbang videos that have millions of views. My roommate used to watch these all the time and they were so disgusting to me. Makes me feel sick watching people stuff their faces and chew so loudly with their mouths wide open. Disgusting. Yeah, I get food travel vlogs, I get food reviews, hell, I even get competitive eater Matt Stoney challenge vids. But seeing people eat huge amounts of food while chewing loudly, smacking their lips off, and most irritating for me, sucking in food that's too much for a single bite, nope. Those social media videos of food being made with so much heavy and greasy crap. You know, the type where it's a whole burger cooked into a quesadilla with a pound of cheese and then fried and covered in 3 different sauces. I hate those videos because sometimes the food starts looking good, then they add more and more and more, then they always get out a stupid squeezy bottle and coat every inch in sauce, and I'm sitting here like, holy crap, you ruined it 5 steps ago, yet you're still going. You'd like the comic book Get Jiro. Weird dystopian fiction where chefs are allowed to enforce quality food control, at the point of a sword if they so choose. Lip injections. You look like a clown. I don't get it. That combined with the fake eyelashes just makes people look absolutely ridiculous, like a cartoon ostrich. Games designed to be addictive instead of fun to suck money out of you. I like my addictive games to be designed to be as fun as possible with a one-time upfront payment. Thank you very much. I could buy 10 absolutely amazing masterpieces I could spend tens of hours with per game, and remember them for decades for the price of a bunch of energy and cosmetics in some crappy mobile game with a dev budget lower than the coffee budget of the advertising department. Yeah, I hate it. The weird, addiction-focused style of games seems to be seeping into AAA titles as well, and it has really been bothering me. This is because microtransactions are disgustingly effective. Celebrity gossip. You're telling me you didn't want to know these 2 strangers with little to no impact on your life just had a baby? Or they got divorced and it's totally Celebrity A's fault because they are such a demeaning but PG insult. People who slam their friends' faces into birthday cakes. Just stop. Or wedding. I paid $300 for my hair and makeup to not have cake all over it. My family was a little worried my husband and I would do that. I'm not sure why, we both hated it. My husband wanted to feed me a tiny slice with a fork because he thought it was cute. Zit popping videos. Oh yes, someone finally said it, it's disgusting! Bro, does anybody actually like that stuff? Reality TV shows. I really appreciate reality TV shows. I can be lazy bookkeeping-wise, but when every channel ever decided they need to replace every other form of the show with them, I'd finally had enough. So for the last decade or so, I've been saving at least $50 a month and probably much more. Reality TV shows basically gave me over $6,000 at this point by weaning me off from any non-streaming sort of video. I reached this point in the 90s. I realized I was coming home from work and watching TV that I didn't really enjoy. I'd waste hours every day on it. Finally, in a fit of self-loathing, I disconnected my TV and put it in the closet. I knew I was too lazy to go dig it out. I got back a nice usable chunk of the living room, became much more productive, and got more sleep. When I went back to school, I sold my TV and hooked a VCR up to an old computer monitor, pre-VGA. It had RCA inputs to watch the occasional movie. I honestly never missed TV. When I got married, I didn't want another TV, but my wife insisted. I've watched some TV over the years, but I still get most of my entertainment from the web. About 4 years ago, she got sick of the TV too. We cut the cord and switched to streaming services. We later gave up on most of those as well. I like not having the TV on. Home is so much more relaxing without it. My mother is getting up there in age, so my wife spends a lot of time at her house. We eat with her most evenings. She still has cable. It's amazing how much I've come to loathe Lifetime, Dr. Phil, Judge Judy, true crime dramas, etc. Oh, and Dr. Pimple Popper should only be available on the web after age verification and signing some form of waiver. Yuck. I truly believe dumping TV has turned out to be a serious improvement in my quality of life. It may not be that way for everyone, but I doubt I'll ever go back to it. Well, I know I can't be the only one that finds them disgusting, but long fake nails. Unless you have a serious case of hand-washing OCD, there's no way that can be hygienic. I lost a job once because a recruiter with long nails mistyped my social security number. The company fired me rather than just confronting me about potential identity fraud. People that let dogs lick their mouths. What is wrong with them? They'll often quote some bull urban myth about dogs having sterile saliva or some such self-deceiving rubbish so they can feel okay about their perverse desire to tongue-kiss dogs. My dog tries to lick my face and I just move my face just a few centimeters out of reach, or put my hand between his tongue and my mouth, because I know he licks himself. Deep-fried butter and deep-fried mayonnaise. It sounds so gross, but everyone seems to eat it at state fairs or amusement parks. Clipping your nails anywhere outside of your house. If you are in a nail salon, that makes sense, but if you are at work or on the bus, just don't. I got these really cool old bedside tables for $5 each to do up. They're solid wood. You couldn't get them that cheap at the store. I was so excited anyway. I've had them in storage a few months and I got them out to sand, and my daughter, 2 years old, opened the bottom drawer and was looking at something gritty. I looked and it was a pile of fingernail clippings. I threw up in my mouth a bit. Something very similar happened to me. Bought a secondhand bedside table from Gumtree for PS5. When I got it home, I opened the bottom drawer, full of all these bits. I put my hand in and brought some out while trying to figure out what I was looking at. And yep, lo and behold, thousands of nail clippings. It's making me retch just thinking about it. Honestly, have never seen so many nail clippings in my life. I mean, what the heck? Is that a thing people do? Collect their nail clippings? There must have been years and years worth in there. Grossest thing ever. Anything Kardashian. I agree, but to be fair, by this point, I think I've seen far more people complain about the Kardashians than I have people actually talk about them positively. Honestly, if people would stop complaining about them, I'd forget they exist at all. ASMR. I struggled with intrusive thoughts that gave me mild insomnia for like years until I found ASMR. I mostly listened to whispering ones because they helped me feel like I had someone else with me, keeping me calm and not letting my thoughts wander. Eventually, I started to like sleeping instead of dreading it, oftentimes wanting to sleep so badly, I just forgot to turn it on, and then, after more time, I could fall asleep normally. I don't listen to ASMR anymore, and if I do, it's usually whispering in foreign languages since I'll be reading, and if it's in English, it distracts me. Gender reveal parties. I knew my child's gender, but I really can't think of a reason for it to be a party. Pictures with babies, or parents creating Facebook profiles in the name of their children, and those children are like 3 years old or less. I'd like to add family vloggers to this. Anyone willing to monetize their children through the invasive filming of their lives is absolutely disgusting. It's child labor and child exploitation in every sense of the word. Not to mention, imagine when the kids inevitably grow up and become their own people, which is most likely to rebel against their parents' values and target market. The scrutiny that they're going to face from strangers who think they know them because they've watched them grow up on YouTube. Screw that. Febreze air fresheners. Febreze was originally unscented, but people thought it didn't work. It does, so they started adding scents to it. I'm not sure if they still sell unscented Febreze, but it's a pretty killer product. I'm not shilling, I just work around food and my clothes always stink. I only get the air variety, which if it does have a scent, it's very subtle. Whiskey. I have so many friends who love it, but the moment it touches my tongue, I gag immediately regardless of how expensive it is. I suspect most people, forced myself to drink it, and one day something clicked and now I love it. It's weird. That's most alcohol you drink straight, honestly. Boiled okra. Okay, this is a special southern answer to this question. It is so good when it's breaded and fried though, right? It becomes a deceptively different thing. Also very good grilled whole and dressed in salt, chili flakes, and lemon. Totally different from what people expect out of okra. Oysters, cockles, abalone, and all other snotty textured seafood. Yuck. Anything people say not to chew, just to swallow whole so you don't really taste it, is a giant nope from me. So slimy. Do you know what I think is sick and weird? Why do some people take pictures of their dead or dying family members? Like, at the hospital with my aunt, and it's pictures of someone's aunt on breathing tubes, unconscious. It makes no sense to me why you would take pictures and put them on social media. This is one of the most cringeworthy things ever. It's so narcissistic and lacking in empathy. Truffles. The smell makes my stomach turn. I feel like there has to be some kind of bizarre conspiracy or truffle gatherer lobby or something for them to be so expensive. You really don't want to upset Big Truffle. Celery. Absolutely hate it. Can tolerate it dried or teeny tiny pieces in something like stuffing, but often people put giant chunks in soups, and out of everyone I've met, only one friend ever shared the same distaste for it. Same. I can have it chopped very finely in stews or soups, but I cannot stand the chunks. It tastes bitter to me and ruins anything that it's in. Being wasted or drinking. I don't know, I tried being wasted once and I didn't like it. I like being in control of my actions 24/7. Yeah, I hate the hangover part the worst. Also, my dad is a raging alcoholic, so I think he ruined the whole drinking to have fun part. Bananas. The smell of ripe bananas makes me want to throw up. I have not met anyone else that dislikes ripe bananas. I also hate ripe bananas. They're too sweet and the texture is awful. I like them while they're mostly green or greenish yellow, but as soon as the brown spots appear, they're going in the trash. Any meat that comes in a can, gross. Growing up poor, you'll eat what you can get. Oysters. They're just like snot. And before you say you've got to try oysters Kilpatrick, adding bacon and sauce will make anything taste good. Yeah, in that case, much better to skip the oysters and just have the bacon and sauce. Blue cheese, followed by lamb. Both, equally, leave a disgusting aftertaste that gasoline could not get rid of. Drink. I've tried every type from IPA to lager to ale. I even work in a bar that prides itself in having over 100 different kinds or brands or whatever of drink. It all tastes bad, like watery bitterness with very little difference in flavor. Oh, you're saying that cool new blueberry drink really tastes like blueberries? No, it doesn't. Why would you lie to me like this? I was looking forward to the taste of blueberries combined with some carbonation and a hint of alcohol, but all I got was blue, bitter, carbonated crap with a lingering sense of betrayal. This is why I stick to cocktails and ciders, because at least that crap has flavor. With a lingering sense of betrayal has to be one of the best ways I've ever seen anyone describe anything edible and disappointing, lol. But as a fellow drink hater, totally agree. I've tried many, even those that people told me didn't really taste like a drink. Liked none. They say it's an acquired taste, but why would anyone subject themselves to drinking something they don't like until they do? Kids acting like brats. My close friend got married recently, and at the rehearsal dinner, the husband's 4 to 5-year-old nephew wouldn't stop talking, refused to walk down the aisle, he was the ring bearer, and threw a tantrum when he couldn't play with his dinosaur toys. The entire time, everybody was laughing like it was the cutest thing on the planet. It's crazy to me when people think that kind of behavior is funny or adorable. I wanted to hear this. I have a friend who I refuse to go over to his place because their kid is a nightmare. She will throw things and just scream for no reason, and they just go, "Honey, please don't do that." And when she continues, they just let it happen. And if she cusses, they die laughing. I kinda lost respect for them for their parenting. Mushrooms. You know when you're washing dishes and some gross piece of food floating in the water touches your hand? That's what mushrooms taste like. I absolutely despise ketchup. My boyfriend says it's very un-American of me. I never liked it even as a child. If you're wondering what I dip my fries in, I use barbecue sauce a lot, or buffalo sauce. Raw tomatoes. Something about the juice just makes me want to vomit. A grown woman using a baby voice on purpose. Coriander. You're probably an unfortunate soul that has that gene that makes it taste like soap. I love cilantro, luckily. I detest spaghetti. I have no idea why. I don't like it though. Water. I cannot stand water. For me, it's disgusting unless it's some flavored carbonated water. I don't know. Fish and seafood. It's disgusting and I hate it. Tried to eat it, but it's just not for me. Buffet-style restaurants. I hate it when other guests mess around with the food I eat, even before COVID. Nutella isn't that great. It's nauseating after a teaspoon of it, actually. I'm aware you're supposed to put it lightly on a piece of toast or a croissant, but in the food hellhole that is America, I've come across Nutella-filled donuts, croissants and crepes with half a cup of Nutella filled in them. Cookies and brownies, already sickening sweet, have at least a cup of Nutella just jammed in the middle, like some unholy cream pie. Onions. Like, I can eat onion rings and bloomin' onions, but I cannot stand onions any other way, in sauces, soups, or any other food. They just overpower it and make everything taste like onion. Maybe they are just disgusting to me, but that's my 2 cents. James Corden. Can't stand the guy. He could be the kindest man in the world, but to me, he isn't funny, lacks any semblance of charm, and is just outright annoying to me. I don't get it. There are rumors that he actually is a huge asshole to people. Chocolate pizza. Everybody said to me it was so delicious, and then I tried it, but I really hated it. I know this guy at work that's a snake and will stab you in the back if it's in his best interest, but most people like him because he's polite and never swears. Bet he's religious too. Being right all the time and contradicting people. Lip injections. Swear to my bones, they never end up looking good. I know quite a few women who have gotten lip injections and Botox. Thing is, if it's done properly, it will look good. But it's not like some Botox is going to make your 45-year-old skin look any younger. It's going to slightly improve your look, but only slightly. The problem is, those who then go absolutely overboard with it. I have an acquaintance who has gotten her lips injected. The first time around, it actually looked good. Her lips were slightly fuller and it fit her face very well. Then she didn't stop getting injections and now it's just painfully obvious and unattractive. Sour drinks. I just can't get into them. I'll drink an ale, a lager, even an IPA if the mood strikes me, but sours, the flavor, is just too strong for me. They're like all I can drink now, but I totally get it. Some can get really funky, almost vomit tasting. Not all sours are created equal though. I'm lucky enough to live in a city with tons of great breweries, and being able to taste small amounts makes it easier to weed out the ones you don't like. Yogurt. I've tried so many different kinds, and all of them taste like sour spoiled milk. I wish I liked it because it seems like such a cheap, easy, healthy snack, but I don't know how anyone enjoys it. Honey drizzled on pizza. There are people who like this? Mamma mia. I'm probably alone in this, but cinnamon. I can't stand the smell. Drooling over a nice car. Maybe I'm just boring, but as long as my car can get me from point A to point B, there's not much else I care about. I don't have a dream car or gasp like others do when a fancy car drives by. They all kind of look the same to me. Guacamole. It's gross. It's a texture thing and a taste thing. I don't like avocado too much, but I much rather just eat avocado. TikTok. I absolutely hate it. How much creativity does it really take to lip sync to somebody else's content? Straight garbage. Goat cheese. It has such a nasty, tangy taste to it that makes me sick. Goat cheese tastes like the smell of goats. That's because it's the same fatty acids, caprese, caprice, and caprylic acid, unsurprisingly named after the Latin word for goat. I might offend some people here, but matcha, and of course anything matcha flavored, food or drinks, it just leaves this disgusting residue in your mouth or some kind of weird aftertaste. I really don't get why people love the flavor. Also bananas. Why is its flavor so strong even when you mix a tiny bit of it in a drink? It's like a crime. Yes, matcha tastes like actual grass and dirt. I used to work at a coffee shop, and whenever I needed to drink matcha for quality purposes, I would throw up every time to the point where I just can't be near it anymore. Fashion. Being a woman who isn't at all into shopping, clothes such as fashion, shoes, bags, jewelry, etc. can be a hard and lonely road. The fashion industry is horrifying and disgusting, populated with people and companies who steal and exploit, who perpetuate a worldview based on exclusion and elitism, and who pander to people's insecurities and consumerist addictions. They create overpriced, sparkly things that distract for a second but leave the buyer endlessly wanting more of that empty hit. No thank you. Candy floss. It's disgusting. I don't understand how someone can eat a bit without throwing up. My only real memory of cotton candy, as it's known on my side of the pond, is vague. I think from very early childhood at a circus with very unhappy elephants and camels that I did not want to ride, crying because my hands were incredibly sticky, and despite begging to wash them, there were only porta-johns with no running water available. This is before people carried baby wipes everywhere. I don't know how long it was until we left, but in the memory it feels like forever. I still hate cotton candy and everything cotton candy flavored. Not washing their hands after using the toilet. My father did that and I was like, you don't wash your hands with soap after a number 2? Those round sugar cookies at the grocery store with chalk sprinkles and acid icing. Had one and my tongue has not stopped tingling since. That sounds like you're allergic to something. Bananas. Disgusting things. The smell alone makes me sick. Corn. My grandmother literally force-fed me creamed corn when I was 7 when I wouldn't clear my plate. It was a wrap after that. Holding babies. I've got so much fear that I would drop the baby. I'm too much in my own head to hold the baby with any confidence. Mint chocolate and ice cream. It tastes like toothpaste. Sloppy Joes. The smell makes me gag and I've never been able to eat them because of that, but everybody else in my family loves them. Pickles. Ditto. Although every so often, if others are enjoying pickles and there are some out on a plate, I'll try one just to see if my taste buds have changed or if I've grown to like them. In fact, I did this less than a week ago. Still don't like them. Vegemite. Couldn't pay me to eat that crap. To be fair, only people in 3 countries actually like this stuff. I love it. Animal agriculture. People say they love animals, but upwards of 95% of people pay other people to kill animals. Seems pretty screwed up to me. Go vegan. Anything disgusting or gross is used as humor, like people joking about farting. It's not funny and it makes me pretty uncomfortable. Dude, same, I absolutely hate potty humor. Now every time I hear a stupid joke like that, the uh-oh, stinky meme pops into my head. Same energy. Twitch or similar streamers, and especially their fans. The weird parasocial relationships their fans form, the childish drama they always foster for content, the meltdowns over online games where adults often verbally accost actual children. The fans cheer on the most awful content and idolize the worst of them. I think it has made online gaming worse since it became popular with their fans, emulating the terrible behavior they see encouraged. You can say the same thing about lots of popular people, like celebrities, musicians, YouTubers, TikTokers, etc. Stuff like K-pop is much worse in that regard. It just sounds like you watch crappy streamers or think the vocal minority represents the entire community. Gentlemen, what's an absolute no-no for a girl to do on a first date? I was on a first date with a girl and everything was going great. We had a nice dinner and the conversation was great. After dinner, she asked if we could head to the bar where I had met her the week before. I said sure, no problem. We get to the bar, order a couple of drinks, and we're having a pretty good time. She points out that the guy she dated for a few months, let's call him Chad, was there. That's kind of awkward to bring up, but whatever. I kind of know Chad since he's a regular at the bar, and we have some mutual friends. I didn't know he and my date used to go out. Chad sees that I'm with her and soon leaves the bar. A few minutes later, my date starts checking her phone and texting someone. I go order another round of drinks. When I get back, my date asks if it would be okay if she went back to Chad's house. I told her she could do whatever she wanted to. I then said goodnight and went home alone. She texted me an hour later apologizing and saying that Chad wouldn't let her in. She then asked if she could come to my house. I politely declined and went to sleep. So I would say trying to hook up with your ex is a huge no-no for a girl to do on a first date. Chad pushed you out the way from that train. Ignore the guy and constantly text on the phone. Guy or girl, I cannot see how anyone thinks this is acceptable. I see it all the time with people on dates, or with friends, and it's so sad. Hell, my friends laugh about the fact that it puts me off, but they're still on their damn phones when we go out for a bite. Expecting him to keep the conversation going. Dialogue is a two-way road. I recently had a girl say to me on a date, "Why do you keep asking me questions?" Because, my dear, you are bringing nothing to the conversation and making me do all the legwork. That's about the time that you go and ask her an open-ended question about herself. Add that you want lots of details and then shut up. Does she say 3 sentences and stop? Keep the silence and let her go awkward. Maybe nod encouragingly and say, "Fascinating, tell me more," while actually looking interested. If she's stupid and can't even bounce the conversation back at you with a similar question or with a tangential topic for 10 minutes, leave. You're literally wasting your time and probably hers too. If you don't have common ground to talk for 10 minutes, you're not fit for a friendship, much less other stuff. Met her online and we chatted for a while. She told me about how her ex-husband screwed her best friend and they ran away together. It actually explained a lot. One night we agreed to meet up after I got off work. The entire day she called me baby, said she loved me, and texted non-stop. If I didn't answer her text right away, she would blow up my phone with calls. She knew where I was. Then during the last 2 hours of my shift, she would count down. Only 2 hours. An hour 45, hour 30, and so on until the last 20 minutes. Then it was every minute. Finally, when my shift was over, she texted me 3 or 4 times if I was on my way. I finally had enough and told her no, I wasn't, and it wasn't going to happen. Then she starts with the pictures of her crying. I had to ghost her for 2 days before she stopped. Poor girl didn't even make it to starting the first date. She needs a therapist, not a date. What about a date with a therapist? Don't meet me at your favorite local pub and then spend the entire date talking to your friends and the regulars and ignore me entirely. I didn't come there to talk to Pete with the wife beater at the corner of the bar. Don't screw someone else while I'm in the next room at the party you dragged me to. Okay, it's the first date and we're far from exclusive at this point, but what the heck? Come to think of it, don't take me to a party on the first date. Don't intentionally dress like a slob to make sure I like you for you. I'm not superficial and I want to know who you really are, but if you look like a wreck, that doesn't say a lot about you, and I don't like games. Don't tell me your grandfather is coming over, so I should go when it's really one of your booty calls. All of these happen. The first one is important. This has happened to me a couple times, and I will never allow it to happen again. Ladies, do not ask the man to meet you at your favorite hangout where you know a bunch of people and he knows no one. First dates are awkward enough. It's ridiculously unfair to put yourself in a really comfortable surrounding while making him that much more uncomfortable. I gotta say, that almost sounds like a perfect scenario to me. Lots of questions to ask when things get too quiet. So how do you know X, etc.? I know she's comfortable, so that makes me comfortable. And I only have to buy 1 round, and I've already ingratiated myself with all of her friends. Of course, if she's totally ignoring me, that's a whole other deal, but that's not the fault of the scenario. That's her fault for being rude and not introducing me to people. Expect the guy to pay. He will likely, anyways, but at least offer 50-50 for the win. Once, I took a girl out who offered to pay for her dinner. I paid anyway, but when we went out for ice cream later that night, she wanted to pay for mine. Be like this girl. It's really the appreciation that counts. Sounds like my last girlfriend. She is now my wife. Talk about your ex. Totally agree. Talking about the exes makes me nervous, especially if he's doing time on a battery charge and about to get out. Ask the guy how much they make in detail. My buddy went on a date with a girl who questioned him in detail about his health insurance benefits. That actually sounds scary. Always expecting the guy to initiate a conversation and carry it 100% of the time. I hate this. If I wanted to start and carry a conversation by myself, why wouldn't I just stay home and talk to myself? Like what? Tell a guy to meet you at a restaurant for a date, and then seat him when he gets there because you're the hostess on shift. Wait, what? Tell a guy to meet you— screw it, never mind. Asking me crap like, who are you? And why are you in my house? I'm a locksmith. She cut me off when the waiter came over and ordered my drink and meal in the name of gender equality. I mean, I guess she's equally as much an arsehole, but I just put the poor execution down to nerves and gave the benefit of the doubt. Then she later got very aggressive while we were discussing our cars. She mentioned that she was just about to spend PS 150 getting her head gasket replaced. I mentioned that PS 150 wasn't close enough to have it done properly and that it would likely fail again, and recommended my mechanic. She blew off the handle, calling me a misogynistic pig and that she didn't need it mansplained to her. It failed again 2 weeks later and was beyond the point of being worth fixing. Needless to say, did not want a second date. Such a huge difference between being helpful and so-called mansplaining. I hate that term. And far too many over-feministic people just don't get it. So many of our newfound culture rules are so annoying. What's the term for when you're a girl in the home improvement store looking for a specific kind of nail because you know from previous experience that it's the kind you need, but you can't find it, so you enlist the help of the old guy in the red vest? He asks you all about the project, and you tell him to, 'cause nice people, you know? And then he whisks you right out of the nail department, telling you all sorts of bad things about nails and walls and drywall and stuff that of course you know, don't know, and takes you to the industrial glue section because glue would work better, he says, and would be easier. So you take the bottle of glue, you go to the register, leave the bottle surreptitiously in the magazine rack, pay for the board, and go to the other home improvement store down the road. This time you remember to say your husband sent you to get nails. You ain't married. This just happened to me. Don't audibly gasp when you notice the waiter is missing an arm, then later tell me you have an incurable form of ringworm. Did you date a cat? Being late, maybe 10 minutes is okay, but 30 to 40 minutes late to our first date? No thanks. Checking your phone? The only real exception is to quickly Google something that came up in our conversation, not asking questions. To be fair, if I'm having a conversation so intense that we start looking to cite sources, then I'm going to marry her. Well, probably not marry for tax reasons, but we can still have a wedding. What tax reasons? I was under the impression that getting married was economically beneficial to the couple. Here's a quick and painless way to handle the bill. Be willing and able to split the bill. Ask if he wants to split it at the end. If he insists on paying, just let him. No sense dragging it out. I only say this because some guys still carry around that heavy stigma that they are meant to provide and pay for everything. And even if they don't, it's still the most awkward part of the date. Well, hopefully. Some girls also carry around that stigma. They should get together and leave me alone. A wise man once told me, by the end of the date, if you still don't know what kind of phone she has, she's a keeper. To be fair, if the conversation is interesting enough, I'll be Googling something at least once every couple of hours, so. Talk in a baby voice? It's worrying me how many women I meet that talk like a 5-year-old. They tend to be the, buy me everything, I care only about myself women, too. I suspect it's related. Order the $100 glass of wine. This is how you end up paying your own bill. True story time. The girl asked me out, which was nice for a change. We were both in our late teens and she said, let's just have fun. Sure, okay, nothing serious. I meet her at a bowling alley. Her friend and her 3 juvenile cousins. Okay. Proceed to bowl. Definitely weird that she has 4 people for support. Then, as per her suggestion, we all go to a billiards hall afterwards. I get a table. After about 10 minutes, she nopes out with her friend. I'm left with her 3 juvenile male cousins and the tab for the table. I literally was asked out to pay for the privilege of babysitting 3 kids I didn't know. She calls a few more times, and I never return her calls. Years later, I see her on Facebook, and it turns out she's a lesbian, and everything made perfect sense now. So, ladies, if you're in the closet, don't waste time asking out straight guys if you really just want someone to babysit your cousins as a sham alibi to keep your sexual identity from your parents. That's one manipulative girl. She should have offered to pay you to babysit. Playing stupid to an excessive level. Being cute or asking more about what I'm into is lovely, but a girl I took to homecoming one year asked me to explain literally every part of football, including the ball. I sat there for a good 10 minutes breaking it down further and further, and she just kept shrugging with the same blank look of, huh? I don't get it. Turns out she was nervous, hadn't been on a lot of dates before, and took a friend's advice way too literally. Just relax. Been there. Had a girl on a date that pretended, or just is that dense, still not sure. She didn't know who Hitler was or have any idea that World War II had even occurred. The girl working the hostess table a few booths away kept face-palming and giving me looks of pity/quiet laughing as the history lesson got sadder and sadder. You should have asked the hostess out when you were leaving. Don't get overly intoxicated. The best first date I ever had went like this. Getting to the place we were going to have dinner, there was like a 30-minute wait for the table, so we walked around to the shops by the restaurant and talked. At dinner, bounced to a nearby bar for another drink, and realized we had a crap load in common. Got plastered, went to a strip club, and went back to my house. Dated for almost a year, broke up on New Year's Day. I had a first date very much like this with a similar outcome. We only lasted a few months though because she moved away, but if you can find a girl who's down for a strip club on the first date, she's a keeper. A flowchart of your sexual needs and expectations. Print it out and laminate it. I would love such a flowchart. If she asks you to shove an entire jar of maraschino cherries into her anus, that's a huge red flag. Trust me. Wait, was she talking about the jar or each cherry individually? Because that makes a big difference. Good point. My mental model was that the cherries were to be inserted individually, but it is a whole other ballgame if the entire jar is to make the fantastic journey. Why that jar? Why not a jar of olives with pimentos? Or a Tabasco bottle, approximately the same diameter? Why not step it up to the business end of a ketchup bottle, which gets progressively thicker? Or just do what I call the Miracle Whip dip, where you jam a mayo jar or faux mayo jar up the dirt road. I once had a girl throw up on me on our first date. We're getting married in July. I sometimes worry that I don't have any standards. Congratulations, that's actually a sweet story. I picked the restaurant we went to and she got food poisoning there. Told me later that an acquaintance of hers had gotten food poisoning there a while before this, but I didn't realize it at the time. I just fed her some dessert squares I'd baked, and then she runs to the sewer grate to puke and doesn't quite get there, so I worry it was my fault. To be fair, I exaggerated a bit when I said it was on me, though she still phrases it that way when she talks about it. She was mostly stunned that I had decided to kiss her at the end of the date, despite knowing she'd just puked. And yeah, she's a nice girl, but when I decided to propose by replicating a fun early date, I picked our second date to recreate, not our first. Personal experience. Don't ignore texts inquiring about meeting up again, and then out of the blue send a message asking if they're free several weeks later. That just says you're not interested unless it's convenient for you. Joanne, that's right, I remember your name. I totally understand girls play with their hair, and if I had long-ass luscious hair, I'd probably play with it all the time. But when you're on a first date, I'd advise against playing with your hair to the point of wrapping it around your fork while you eat, and pulling out strands and making a pile of stringy hairs next to your napkin. Really takes you from that cute girl who worked at the movie theater who I asked out, totally stoked you said yes, to I wish you were bald. I have a thing with hair. I assure you I would have vomited on the table seeing that. Ask me a question, then change the subject before I can finish answering. Please do not take the last slice of pizza. You are the woman, and I respect that you deserve to be treated like a lady. But don't just assume that you're the one who is going to get the last slice of pizza. There are many things to take into consideration. Who drove to the pizza place? Who had the first slice of pizza? The saying goes, ladies first, not ladies last. Assuming I took you on a date to a pizza place, I probably insisted on picking you up. Therefore, I have already spent money on gas and planned ahead, thus spending time and energy to do so. Then I probably let you pick your seat and pulled out the chair for you. Finally, I assume that I let you have the first slice of pizza because you're worth it, and I'm interested in you. That last slice of pizza, however, may still be yours, but don't assume so. You can't have your cake and eat it too, or in this case, pie. Thanks for listening. Are you dating the pizza or the girl? Which makes you happier? Ask me why I still have a debit card. What? Why wouldn't you? Because it's so much more fun for her to run up the debt on your credit card. I've been in a lot of long and short-term relationships, and if I could give my younger self any advice, it'd be this: be yourself and be honest about who you are. If the girl you're on a date with doesn't like you for who you are, it's not going to be fun. Don't waste your time with someone who wants you to change, and don't waste her time if you're not hitting all the boxes on her perfect man checklist. To answer the question, if you're honest about who you are and she isn't stoked about that, it's not a good fit. Move on. I went on a date with a girl who I met online. During this time, we were both in college. She had just finished her undergrad, and I was still working on my non-traditional undergrad, work and school. She was very proud of going to a big-name school for pre-med, like overwhelmingly proud. I had recently learned my lesson about meeting someone based solely on their dating profile, so I did my requisite 5 minutes of online research. Turns out, she ran a huge blog about going to med school in Mexico, and how it was her only option because of her poor grades in undergrad. Her blog reassured the reader that there was no shame in it at all, because really, American med schools have too high of standards and blah blah blah. I didn't think much of it, to each their own. She seemed cool enough. Flash forward to our date after a half-dozen messages. I pick her up from her parents' house and drive her to a nearby bar. Strike one, needing transport on a first date. We chat for a little bit, and then she starts grilling me on my plans for the future. Which is okay, I guess, but then she had the gall to listen to my plans, nod her head, and act like she was my guidance counselor and tell me that it was a pretty good path for me, or suggest a different school, masters, etc. She also made a point of talking about how hard her undergrad was, and what an achievement it was for her to graduate from X school. This continued for over an hour and got worse and worse, as she kept commenting on my life and giving me suggestions. She was literally acting like she was judging me from a throne. Strike two. She got super defensive and nasty when I asked her where she was going to med school and refused to answer. All the while she was chowing down. I'm not one to hold someone's size against them, but this girl ate 40+ wings and a platter of deep-fried cheese solo, all while getting sloppily wasted, the entire time telling me over and over how she doesn't normally drink at all. Strike 3 and 4. We were at a bar for about 90 minutes total. To her credit, she offered to split the bill, and we did, and I made a point of ducking out early. She insisted on walking home, and while I was trying to talk her into letting me drive her home or calling a cab or a friend, it was a 3-mile drive at around 11 p.m. She snuck out the side door and ran away. I was understandably concerned, so I called and left a voicemail asking if she got home okay, and sent a text to the same effect. Suffice to say, I had no attraction to judgmental garbage disposal who looked nothing like her profile picture, but still, fearing she got hit by a car or something, I texted her the next day letting her know I wanted to make sure she got home okay because she was pretty wasted. She waits 24 hours from that point and sends me the nastiest text ever, telling me essentially that I needed to take the hint and leave her alone because she obviously wasn't interested. So like, strike 5? Anyways, basically being this girl and doing any of the things she did is a huge no-no. Sounds like she's overcompensating for not being able to get into the med school of her choice. I ended up having my first and only date with a girl who was vegan not too long ago. Not that being vegan is a problem, but it's helpful for the story. To start, the conversation was miserable, and interacting with her was totally awkward. Can't stand going out to dinner with someone who expects me to carry the conversation, but that wasn't even the worst part. What really sealed the deal was when the waitress brought out our drinks. Both were water with lemon. She asked if I ever eat my lemon, and while I thought it was a little strange, I said that I didn't and just chalked it up as a vegan habit. She then proceeds to eat the lemon from her water, rind and all. I was a little disturbed by this, but again, this itself wouldn't have been a nail in the coffin. However, things were about to get so much worse. She then asked if I was going to eat mine, and I once again declined. She reaches over, grabs my straw, and tries to fish the lemon out of my water. I kept my best poker face, but soon lost it when she couldn't get the lemon out of my straw and instead stuck her hand in my drink to grab the lemon and eat it. Needless to say, I was very dehydrated for the rest of my meal while she awkwardly stared at me eating a burger with painfully little conversation. Ladies, if we've been together for several months and you're trying to mess with me, that's one thing. On your first date though, don't touch anything I'm about to ingest. It's disgusting. This is like a Seinfeld bit. Taking pictures of the food or cocktail is a huge turnoff for me. It signals vain and vapid. Going from a woman's perspective, they may see this as a compliment. If you chose the restaurant and they're excited about the food, taking a photo is a way to show that. It's part of the whole enjoying the thing for me. Some people just do it for attention though, so I can't speak for everyone. Basically this, I love food, and I get really excited about good tasty food and its presentation when it comes to me. I'm definitely one of those people who tweets pictures of her food, but it's just because I'm thrilled about having it. I don't have a lot of followers, I'm not a foodie or anything, and it makes up very little of my online presence, but I did used to be broke though, and survived half a year on eggs and rice, so maybe that's part of it. Nice food makes me happy. What made you realize that most people are not very smart? As a child, I was fascinated by animals. Once, I was talking with my friend about how fast peregrine falcons can attack. His father interrupted and made fun of me by saying, "Have you ever stuck your hand out the car window? You're saying a bird can fly faster than that? That would blow their feathers off." That's when I realized that even adults can be blithering idiots. Several years ago, I was visiting a zoo. I was walking into the burrowing owl exhibit as a couple with a toddler was walking out. As I walked past, I overheard the following. Mom to child. "What animals did we just see?" Child. "Owls that live in the ground." Mom. "Birds don't live in the ground, silly." Visiting a zoo will disappoint you, as you overhear parents say really dumb things to their kids. If only there was a sign that explained everything your kids needed to know about the pig exhibit. Wild boar. Peer reviewing essays in college. It's hilarious because people tell you before you get to college to not expect any slack, but the teachers always have to, because the expectations are set so low by the students. The curve in my stats class was so exaggerated that a 30% on the final was a B-. When I was a teenager and worked a cash register, my brother used to work as a cashier at a grocery store. Every day he would get destroyed by old people trying to use expired coupons for like 5 cents, or coupons from different stores for not even what they were buying. It would sometimes be for a penny difference, and these people would lose it on him and wish death upon his family. I worked at a car wash for my last job. People would come on and try to use a coupon for something like 20% off one of our washes. It expired by at least a week, sometimes a month or more. "What do you mean it's expired? I just pulled that out of the paper." Okay, it expired on 9/15, not on 9/15 or whenever you get around to clipping it. In the 3rd grade, I got points off of a test because my teacher thought a shark was a mammal. When I got my test back with the points deducted, I showed her an encyclopedia entry showing they weren't mammals. She sent me to the principal's office to have him set me straight, and he also believed that they were mammals and refused to review any evidence that said otherwise. I had to go to the library and pull multiple books on sharks before they begrudgingly acknowledged the mistake. I probably learned more from that experience than from the entire year in the classroom. One of my earliest memories was needing to pick a word that started with K in senior kindergarten, and me choosing kelp because I learned it from a Magic School Bus episode. I think it was a pretty foundational lesson in my life, how no one in the class, including the teacher, believed that it was a real word. One time, I was sitting on a subway in Washington, D.C. The guy in front of me was probably in his late 20s, was on his phone. He was one of those people who talks on speaker in public places, so I could hear the whole conversation. Anyway, the person on the phone with him was clearly a scammer. They had an accent I couldn't place and was asking for personal info. So the scammer says, "Hello, this is a representative from Google. There is a security risk in your Google wallet. It appears someone tried to log into your account. To fix this issue, please verify it's you with your credit card number and security code." At this point, I was expecting this guy to hang up and go about his day, but instead, a look of worry comes across his face, and he says, "It's those darn idiots at the bar again," and pulls out his card. I looked up, and just before he started speaking to the scammer, I said, "Hey dude, it's a scam, just hang up." This dude looked right at me and said, "Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. Someone might get my credit card information if I don't do this." In pure amazement, I sat back down and let him proceed. He continued to read the scammer his credit card number and security code on speaker in a crowded subway. When he was finally done with the whole thing, the scammer says, "Thank you for your cooperation. In 7 to 10 business days, we will get back to you regarding the security breach." The guy said thanks and then hung up. And no joke, the person right next to him said, "Wow man, that could have been bad. Good thing you verified your credit card, huh?" I just sat in pure dumbfounded amazement for the rest of the ride, while the guy just sat across from me thinking nothing of it. It's those darn idiots at the bar again. What is the backstory here? Probably a card skimmer. We caught a guy doing that blatantly in front of customers. Fired, and then the local police arrested him. The moment the toilet paper aisle was empty at the start of the pandemic. In our local store, it only became empty after the news headlines about Americans stockpiling toilet paper. It was fine before that. Also, even before COVID, when there was a snowstorm coming, people stocking up on toilet paper like they expected to be snowed in for a couple months. Working a client-facing job. Also, a lot of people at high-level positions can't write or do basic maths or rely on lower roles to do it for them. I'm amazed sometimes that my boss, 50-something, has kids, built up numerous companies from nothing to massively successful. This man cannot write. He has an 8-year-old's level of vocabulary, and his spelling and punctuation are below even that. His reading's a bit better, but doesn't use big words. This man at one point was the head of 60 people. He was making huge profits, and he's barely literate. It's crazy. Why does one waste time saying a lot of words when few words do trick? I was a server back then, and a lady complained. Not the lady who ordered the dish. After her colleague ate the dish that I should have told her our Cobb salad uses iceberg lettuce instead of romaine lettuce. I said, I don't understand why I would tell you if it says it in the description when she ordered it. See? Iceberg lettuce? The lady told me I still should have mentioned it. I had an attitude at that point and said, oh, well, her bowl is empty. She could have said something. This was just one of many. What do you mean the steak I ordered is red meat? It doesn't say that anywhere, and I'm vegan, so I'm offended. I once had to deal with this in a pub. I was in the kitchen and got an order for a beef burger with cheese. The person at the till had to select beef or chicken. The 2 girls I served it to said, yes, that's us, when I arrived with the food saying 2 beef burgers with cheese. Then, they are all but 1 bite in and complained to the manager saying that they ordered a chicken burger and eating beef was against their religion. This was really basic food, not a burger with 12 toppings needing a skewer to hold it in place, just literally a bun, burger, and cheese. It was easy to see from the side if it was beef, not chicken. I used to do studies to see if prescription medicines can safely switch to over-the-counter. All people had to do was read the directions and warnings on mock-up packaging for the medicines, and then answer the questions I asked them. I interviewed people who could straight up die if they took this medication due to pre-existing conditions. 90% failed to take in the warnings placed all over the box and responded that they would take the medication if it were available to them. I interviewed people with master's degrees and PhDs who still said they would take it. Most people, even smart ones, are idiots. I think this one stems from people misunderstanding pharmaceutical activity. It's not something that is really taught to people, and I only came to understand it once I started taking drugs. I work in pharmaceutical production, and many people will cringe at the thought of handling all sorts of chemicals, like solvents and stuff. I'm happy to handle all sorts of solvents, things unstable in air, peroxide formers, etc. It's been heavily ingrained in me that chemical's bad, and I automatically act accordingly. The things that make me nervous are the API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, materials after they're made. Usually just plain-looking white powders. They're specifically designed to make the human body work differently, and many can be absorbed in a myriad of ways without even knowing until it's too late. But not its drums of hexanes that sound scary to people outside the industry. Working retail and been asked the same questions by the same people multiple times while standing next to a sign with the same info printed on it. Are you having a sale? They say, surrounded by items on racks with big red sale signs attached to them in a shop with huge sale signs so large they block the light from the windows. Well, to be honest, you can't be sure that it's not the stupid store that kept the sale signs after the sale ended. Knocks on locked shop door. Are you open? And 1,000 other variations during my time in retail. This isn't stupidity, it's selfishness. They know the door is locked for a reason. They just think they're special, and maybe you'll open the door just for them. Anytime I see people arguing in a store or restaurant about something that is clearly a corporate decision, and over which the poor employee has no control, that is what truly limited intelligence looks like. When I was a teenager, I worked at a big box retailer. Every Sunday the ad would come out. Every Sunday we didn't have most of the crap in the ad. And every Sunday I'd get lectured by customers about bait-and-switch advertising and corporate mortality. I actually found the best comeback for this was basically, "Sir, I'm 17 years old and making $5.50 an hour. This was the 90s. Do you think I have any control over this? Most everyone I said that to had the realization that yeah, it's a waste of time to even address this issue with me. I just found out that at my store, every time the new sales ad comes out, she visits to dig through the store for anything improperly labeled so she can get it for free. Anything that is on sale but doesn't have a new tag on it rings up as if it weren't on sale, so we have to give it away. It must take her over an hour, and her haul isn't really that big. When I had to deal with it, she only got away with like less than $10 worth of free stuff. 2 years into the pandemic and people still wear their masks under their nose. There was a guy in my office who constantly wears his mask under his nose. Masks are not required in my office. We have mandatory vaccination. I truly do not understand his thought process. He wants to feel like he's taking precautions without actually taking precautions for self-fulfillment. The entirety of 2020 and 2021? Seriously, I've worked in retail and in restaurants and I've complained about stupid people, though I'm pretty good at understanding how and why people do stupid things and try to be super understanding as long as they're not being belligerent about it. But these last 2 years, just no. No. Working in accounting has you talking to people from the bottom of the command chain to the top, and at every level people are dumb. It's remarkable that anything ever gets done. When I was self-employed, I think my accountant hated me and thought I was an idiot. I was really worried he would fire me. Really good accountants. After we got Google and the internet became popular, we have all the information at our fingertips and people still choose ignorant fads. The internet is simultaneously one of the greatest and one of the most misused inventions of all time. The overlap between the smartest bears and the dumbest humans is considerable, according to park rangers designing trash cans to keep bears out. Especially if they're smarter than the average bear. Hey, boo-boo? Working in an office, so many people lack very basic critical thinking skills and don't try to figure things out for themselves. I must get 10 Googleable questions a day. Many times I just respond with my Google results. Oh, this is exactly me as well. People think I'm the smart guy. I mean, I am smart, but I've even said that the answers they seek are available to them if they just search. People are lazy, and that laziness shows their lack of intelligence sometimes. I feel like I, a 35-year-old American male from upper-middle-class suburbs, can add this perspective. I remember the advent of the internet. Dial-up tones, AOL discs, MySpace, Hotmail, Amazon only selling books, Facebook being .edu emails only. I also remember grown-up teachers preaching that the internet wasn't a reliable resource when having to write 7th and 8th grade research papers about whatever. Anyone can post anything on the internet. Fast forward a decade or two and every boomer teacher I had is deep diving Facebook for medical information about what to put or what not to put into their bodies and treating it as gospel. I'm fairly comfortable and secure in my intellect and knowledge base, but do you have any idea how still confusing that is? The 2016 US elections, even though I'm not American, and the pandemic. Also, not very smart is an understatement. The level of ignorance, stupid selfishness, and idiotic beliefs I've seen especially since the pandemic began is absolutely depressing. That idiocy existed before the 2016 election and the pandemic. Those two major events amplified the idiocy to an unprecedented level, and all of it was brought to the news or social media, exacerbating the issues further. It's a self-perpetuating trash system. I worked as a docent in an aquarium. Our sea lion was at different times 1. A salamander, 2. A robot, 3. Bears, 4. Otters. The penguin wasn't flying because of the identification band. So many things. So the sea lion was 3 bears and 4 otters in a suit? Controlled by Skynet with lizard people technology. Seriously though, when one of the sharks was swimming by the surface above the guest, they asked why the other shark was swimming upside down above the shark. It was a reflection. The more I met people at work, there were people in high-ranking positions that are complete morons. This, and one person by themselves can be really intelligent, but put them in a group and they'll start acting dumb to fit in. Groupthink. Reddit. The complete lack of logical reasoning and critical thinking skills was all the evidence I needed. Also liked Agent K's comment. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. Humans only have bounded rationality though. We're subject to our physiology, hormones and neurotransmitter dump that directly affect the way in which we reason. Agent K was spot on. I was looking at a box of pizza and it had a warning to open the box before eating written on it. Pretty sure claymores have "do not eat" on the back of them. It's not on the claymore itself, but the blasting cap has warned to not bite down on it. On top of that, any brief will show pictures of some dumbass who did that, and there will be constant warnings against biting down on it. getting my first professional job. There was just as much high school level gossip in an upscale office as you'd find in an actual high school, yet these people were in their 40s. Gossip is something that all generations do. I was surprised as well when I left high school and all the adults were gossiping like it was a lunch break in high school. I started working in healthcare and realized that all the patients are idiots and we must tolerate them or else they get cranky. To be fair, when in pain or otherwise feeling unhealthy, you are genuinely less on top of things, and it can really make you loopy. Panic does a number too. That said, healthcare workers are for the most part a patient kind of hero. Speaking as someone who went through a bout of hypochondria and was treated with more respect than I deserved by medical staff, at the end of the day, the kindness helped the most. And I can imagine it's not always an easy job. The part about not being on top of things rings extremely true. I was once in ER due to bleeding after a biopsy. It was not too hard to get from the front door to the gynecological ER. The instructions had 4 steps, I think. I couldn't even parse them. I wasn't panicking, but my brain felt like the emptiest in my life. The nurse at the entry luckily noticed and walked me there. I used to work one-to-one with a child who has Down syndrome in a nursery. One of the other practitioners asked me if they would ever grow out of it. My brain still hurts thinking about it. As soon as we can shear this extra chromosome pair off, we'll get them up and running in no time, darling. When COVID happened and everyone who barely passed 9th grade science suddenly knew more than doctors and scientists. But she read it on Facebook. She's done her research. People who seriously believe that Facebook and Telegram and social media in general are good and reliable sources to find information about a deadly virus are truly the most clueless people among humanity. Working in the customer service industry. I believe it should be mandatory for everyone to work in customer service for at least 2 years. I feel like the world would be a better place if that happened. More than half the people driving on the road are operating death machines without their lights on. They don't care about visibility or are ignorant of how to turn on their full lighting system. This is stupid. This is why daytime running lights and automatic headlights are a great thing. I would say that's what brought us here. When people had to consciously turn them on or off, they did. Now people are so accustomed to automatic lights that they have no idea how to or even if they should turn them on in a storm during the day. During Obama's inauguration, the TV ratings of the ceremony were outdone by Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. To be fair, it's not like the ending of the inauguration ceremony was in question. Every day, I think that people can't get any more stupid, and every day I'm proven horribly wrong. Working in a restaurant will do that for you. Guest who has a menu. What comes on the salad? Menu. Salad. Field greens, tomato, parmesan, balsamic. Me. Field greens, tomato, parmesan, balsamic. Guest. Is it gluten-free? People will legit look at a buffet pizza with pepperoni on it, read the sign on the glass that says pepperoni pizza, and then look you in the eye and ask, "Are these pepperoni pizzas?" without a hint of irony. Yep, as someone who worked for Pizza Hut for 13 years, this is so true. Do you have any cheese pizzas? They are all cheese pizzas. Just cheese? Yeah, there's a margarita pizza right there. Looks at the pizza. Which one? Internal screaming. That one right there in front of you with the green handle, with no additional toppings on it. Your versus your. Losing versus loosing. In all honesty, I've been on Reddit for a long time and the Boston bombing is a great example of how stupid people are as an aggregate. Also, Reddit is extremely liberal, and being a moderate who is an Asian American, I get labeled as a Chinese shill whenever I point out how off people are about their Chinese hate, which is exactly what it is. Ignorance based on race used to justify broad assumptions with no actual basis in fact. They just want a reason to hate China, and as someone who experienced it in my entire childhood, I know what it looks like. The fact you are on the left doesn't change the fact that you are acting exactly like the hate mongers on the right. But I have to be a shill, right? If you're a liberal, there's a lot to hate about China. No respect for democracy, human rights, etc. The government is completely indefensible. Not that we don't have massive problems here, too. People who don't read everything on a coupon they are trying to use. Exclusions, expiration dates, minimum purchase amount, etc. And then argue when it's expired or unusable and we don't accept it. Customer. Well, any store takes expired coupons. Why don't you? Me. Because the coupon says it expired and the register denies the coupon. Customer. Let me speak to your manager. Me. Sure thing. Manager. Says the same thing I said. Customer. I should get an exception. I'm the most important customer here. Your coupons shouldn't expire anyway. Manager. They are our coupons and we make our own rules about them. You can search for another valid coupon, but no, you can't use this one. and no, we don't keep coupons in the store. Although most times the manager would just give them the discount. The best part, usually those coupons were for 20% off a $5 to $10 item and/or a free item worth like $2. I worked at a company with a reputation for only hiring the smartest, brightest, most brilliant people on the planet. After being there a while, I looked around the room and went, "Hold up," and you realized you were one of them. I think what really drilled it home was when I started working in upscale hotels. People spend $6,000 a night on rooms that don't know how to open a door to get outside. I thought you had to be some level of smart to be rich, but no, it's just luck and who you know. The "I did my own research" crowd usually involves them searching soccer mom blogs and listing them as science. Working customer service, the average IQ of the public isn't even room temperature on a good day. Working a job that deals with the public, the amount of stupid questions I get on a daily basis is ridiculous. One time I was standing on a staircase and a customer comes up and asks directions from the bottom, to which I replied, "Yes, it's right up here to the left." And they proceed to ask how they get up there. Just walk up the stairs? The fact so many people vote for the same political party year in and year out, while never so much as considering another. What is the point of democracy if people don't consider their options every election? Meeting people from all walks of life and trying to experience a slice of that life. It's not stupidity, it's relevance. Most people don't see how what you think matters is relevant to them. I don't think it's necessarily a lack of intelligence for the most part. I may be wrong, but I remember reading somewhere that the average IQ worldwide is higher now than it was 50 years ago. I think a lot of it is simply ignorance and laziness. We tend to take the path of least resistance. Our brain likes shortcuts and simple answers, and the majority of us won't take the time to actually investigate things or try to really think critically about something. We've become too easily distracted and too easily manipulated, and I think laziness and ignorance are to blame. Oh yes, people are so much worse when they're in groups. Also, intelligent people tend to doubt themselves and will conform if enough people say something because they're smart enough to think, maybe I'm the one in the wrong. Conformity is weird because it's associated with stupidity, but really it's more like everyone, even smart people, conform, which leads to stupidity. It's why fire hosing is such a powerful misinformation tactic, and also why things like the Ash conformity experiment work so effectively. I know smart people who believe crazy crap, and that's because they are surrounded by stupid people in their environment, and their intelligence just gets snuffed out. It's like, why do so many people around me believe that the Earth is flat? I know it's round, but if this many of my friends believe it, maybe from their perspective, I'm the idiot. I mean, I believe that the Earth is round just as passionately as they believe it's flat. Maybe I'm not being open-minded enough? What's more likely, that I alone am right, or that the 95% of people screaming at me that it's flat are? I avoided political examples, but this sort of thing happens a lot with politics too. Every day when I get in my truck to drive somewhere, it used to be people driving like idiots during Christmas time, and the rest of the year was pretty okay. Then one year, a few years ago, people just never stopped driving like idiots. What's the funniest thing you've seen someone do that you weren't allowed to laugh at? At my friend's grandfather's funeral, the first sentence of the pastor's speech was, "We are all here because we love Peen so much." His name was Richard. The holy man gave a 15-minute speech about his love of Peen and how Peen changed his life. My wife and I did not make eye contact through the entire thing, for fear of busting out laughing in a quiet, crowded church. It took me about a year to ask my friend his thoughts about it, and apparently he was close to losing it too. A guy was acting as his own attorney. He was questioning himself in court by standing up, asking a question, and then sitting down to answer it. The judge finally looked at him and said, "Sit down, Mr. X." I almost lost it, but managed to hold my court demeanor. I can't help but imagine this with him putting on a funny voice when he was the lawyer, to differentiate the characters. It's what any good actor would do. Paramedic here watched someone wasted falling down a bunch of stairs. He had several broken bones and looked like a pretzel. He then just screamed at his friend to get him a new drink because he dropped his. Nearly mad myself. "Sir, can you move your arm? Why are you sticking it out like that?" "I'm waiting for a drink to appear in my hand." You have no idea how accurate that is. Helping a grade 2 class, 8-year-olds, and one of the kids was just so loud. He was running around the class when one of the girls held out her arm and clotheslined him. I was able to keep a straight face for that, but she kneeled down and yelled, "Boom!" at him. He started crying. They both got detention, and I almost bit through my tongue. I would have lost it at boom! Kids can be brutally hilarious. Just the simplicity of it, isn't it? So one time, me and my class were watching a play where all of the actors were both blind and deaf. At one point, they were walking on the stage with no one to guide them, and one of them fell off the stage. That's some Eric Andre crap. Rapper Ninja Warrior, don't stop rapping! I was in a cadaver lab for an anatomy class, and that week we were learning hip and upper leg muscles. My group was at the table, and one of the guys proceeded to roll the cadaver leg over, from looking at the hamstring to studying the quads. We didn't realize that the leg belonged to a male until its peen slapped him straight on the back of his hand. The entire group was breathing super hard, trying not to laugh and appear disrespectful in the eyes of the tutors, but I honestly reckon the guy would have been laughing with us. If I could donate my body to be used for that exact scenario, I'd sign up right now, especially if it meant you could watch it happen as a ghost. You could use your ghost powers to keep swinging it back onto his hand whenever he moves it. I'd come join you. My stepdad was an Italian from Manhattan. He had the classic Italian mobster accent. We all live in Minnesota, born and raised, so his accent was definitely different from what we're used to. My brother loved to playfully make fun of him by imitating him by saying classic Italian mobster exclamations, along with hand mannerisms. Stepdad was a laid-back guy and found it funny, and the banter between these two was very lighthearted. So one day, we were having a small get-together at our house with my mom, stepdad, my brother, and a few friends. We were all hanging out outside when my 4-year-old daughter's excitement started saying, Uncle Polly, watch this! As everyone watched, she went over to a piece of dog poop, pointed at it by shaking her open-palmed hands, and exclaimed in the most perfect Italian mobster accent, "What is this?" She even did the head bob perfectly. We all stifled laughter. I love this one. She sounds like a card. Oh, she definitely is. She is 16 now and is definitely the funniest person I know. Just 2 nights ago, my picky daughter was telling us that she didn't like meatloaf. No way, no how. Then she described a Japanese hamburger steak that she wanted to make. Hamburger, breadcrumbs, egg, ketchup, and soy sauce, etc. When she was done, I said that she described the exact thing sitting on her plate, and she got really mad. Laughing only made her madder. Couldn't stop laughing, though. Kids, man! Something similar happened when my daughter decided she no longer liked eggs. We started making eggless omelets, which she just loved. We even had to tell Grandma the recipe so that she could make it too. We finally told her the truth, and she started eating eggs like a normal person again. Can I know the recipe? It's eggs. That's it. The CD started skipping at my stepmom's funeral. Everyone thought it was a sign from her, but it turned out it was just a crappy CD. It was a sign to put a better CD on or to change the song. Change it to I Walked with a Zombie for best effect. I've watched some children run into glass doors, but I couldn't laugh. I had to be nice. Sometimes I wonder if all other people are holding back laughter, but just staying quiet to make the parents feel better. As a parent, I hold it back long enough to see that they're okay, not bloody or broken, etc., then start laughing. It seems to make them laugh off small pains. They see that the other people are laughing and they are less likely to cry for attention. I went to a Holy Rollers church with my friend in middle school. I had no idea her church would be like this. She had an emotional breakdown at the end of Mass, and we went to the bathrooms so that she could cry, and we started walking back into the worship center where her mom, a big woman, was, and some other people were still praying. I hear someone shouting, which wasn't hard to find at this church, as we get closer to the front and it's her mom speaking in tongues. It for real sounded like a Harry Potter spell chanted over and over again. Her hands were flailing in the air and she eventually fell over to her right side and crushed a skinny guy next to her. I had to stifle my laughter so bad I almost peed. Later, I told my friend that I was sorry her mom fell over in church, and she said she didn't fall, she was pushed. I was confused because I know I saw her fall. She looked me dead in the face and said she was pushed by the Holy Spirit. I threw my head back laughing, and I and her weren't very good friends after that. I grew up going to churches like that. It's hilarious from an outsider view, but it's so serious to members. I always struggle with how demoralizing that must be if you really believe, but are performing to fit in, because the crazy crap never seems to happen to you. Like, I imagine there's so much insecurity from feeling like a fraud, but needing to fit in. But really, everyone is in the same isolated box, so it just gets pushed further and further so nobody catches on. I was watching Hunger Games in theaters, and the Rue death scene caused a reaction from the person behind me that left me laughing so hard, I thought the people who didn't hear her would think I was a horrible person. Right when the spear hits her, I heard this, "Oh, damn!" from behind me, like it was the most stereotypical dumb reaction gif sound effect of a dude getting kicked in the nads. It clashed with the scene so much, and was the only time the person ever spoke, it just cracked me up. Something similar happened when I went to see Hamilton, when he, spoiler, gets shot by Burr and dies. This girl in front of me audibly gasped and said, "Oh no!" I had no idea the ending was a mystery to people, so I was chortling while Alexandra was dying. I don't know how it can be a mystery with the line from the opening song where Burr says, "I'm the damn fool that shot him." It's not a kept secret. My first time in Houston, a very large lady was going up a full escalator. Near the top, she suddenly fell into a low sitting position as if her legs gave in. She didn't fall down the steps or anything, she was just stationary, no longer moving up with the escalator. Her size prevented anyone from passing around her, so everyone behind her began to walk backwards to not crash into her, some picking up their luggage. Did she get wedged in or something? How was she not moving up the escalator? I'm picturing like a cartoonish falling up scenario where she was only falling fast enough for the escalator to keep her stationary. When my aunt died, I was heartbroken. I loved her very much. She was in a coma and we had sort of a living wake for her. At her funeral though, I don't know. I must have been all cried out or something. True to her style though, she played the goddamn Collingwood theme song as the coffin left, and I lost my crap. I pretended to sob down the back of the church, but I was pissing myself laughing. This is something I want to do at my funeral. I want to play Rick Astley or something. I have informed my family that if Green Day's "Haha, You're Dead" is not played at my funeral, I will haunt the crap out of those responsible. In boot camp, the drill instructors are constantly trying to get you to break your bearing, get you to show emotion or like you're being affected by what's going on around you. Turns out one of the best ways to do this is to be violently funny people who constantly pepper the most creative insults into their tirades, and occasionally they venture into pure lunacy. So during range week, when we were in the pits pulling targets, one of the recruits was around, not taking things very seriously. So our heavy informed him that if he wasn't going to be serious, he was going to skip up and down the line of targets, shouting a very specific phrase, "Fire the candy cannons! Coat the town with marshmallows!" Said recruit was, predictably, not very enthusiastic about being forced to do this, and he half-heartedly mumbled while he was moving down the line. Our heavy was displeased with this performance and exhorted him to improve thusly. No, with feeling, like this. "Fire the candy cannons! Coat the town with marshmallows!" With such a savage mocking of the fake British accent a lot of theater kids pick up that it almost had to be informed by personal experience. Ridiculous then, ridiculous now, probably ridiculous on my deathbed. Our teacher was scolding the class, but in his rage-induced lecture, he accidentally knocked over a stack of graded papers onto the floor, ruining the perfect by-name order he had them in. That's not what was funny. What was funny was he immediately said out loud, "Ah, shucks," since he wouldn't swear. This came out of a man whose face was red as a lobster. I almost choked trying not to laugh. Out of all the comments, I just imagined this happening. I had a high school teacher who was very moody and a sarcastic person. One day, he took a full-size poster board, took a black Sharpie, and wrote "Ticking Time Bomb" and then hung it around his neck. He wore it all day. No one was supposed to laugh because that could set off the bomb. Also in his class one day, he asked a question in class. One of the big jocks hurriedly answered by saying, "Well, I read that, blah blah." This teacher looked at him and said, "You read?" When I was a kid, there was this really old man who came to church religiously. He could barely even move without assistance and needed a walker for balance. So one Sunday morning, he decides he needs to use the restroom, which is adjacent to the main room where all of us are sitting and taking communion. You know, the wine and bread part. Suddenly, while one of the men is praying, we hear a loud thump come from the bathroom, followed immediately by a long drawn-out groan. I still feel bad about it, but that groan, especially as a kid hearing it during the communion of all times, was one of the funniest things I ever heard in church. Well, immediately some men got up, rushed over, and got the door unlocked. Turns out the old man fell and broke his hip, and that was the last we ever saw of him at the church. Rest in peace, old man. So the dean of our college had recently passed away due to cancer, and he was a nice/popular guy. So he was very well liked by the students and faculty. During an event to commemorate him, all of the students and faculty gathered and some people went on stage to share their memories of him. This one guy, a new student who barely knew him, goes up on stage and starts giving this really emotional speech. The only problem was that he was talking about another faculty member who was very much alive and had just gone abroad for a few months for training. The dude went into all the details about his life and even called him by name to make it evident what was happening. Turns out he thought the wrong guy was dead, and his attempt to an overly emotional speech made it worse. Looking at all the confused people on stage, the situation was very funny. But just before him, other students and teachers had given heartfelt eulogies for the dean, so it felt wrong to laugh at the time. But we crack up every time we remember that day now. And as I'm leaving, I think, I just got a free churro because my mom died. No one ever tells you when your mom dies you get a free churro. It was a small art gallery opening. The lady who owned it was a friend of my mother's, so we were invited. My mother, me, 16 years old, and my brother, to come to the very fancy high culture festivities. She had arranged some light entertainment in the form of an interpretive dancer. This podgy middle-aged lady in flowy fabrics with a scarf was flying around the small lawn, waving her scarf and arms about randomly, and occasionally rolling about on the ground. I think it was accompanied by Enya music. I could barely breathe and had to bite my tongue super hard and absolutely make sure I did not look at my mother or brother, or we would have all died of laughter. You just reminded me of one of the strangest dates I ever went on. I have a weakness for cute, sad hipster dudes with guitars, and was invited to go on a showcase for the label this dude was on. It was a very small indie label. Yeah. So I go and meet up with the guy. Things are going fairly well, and we're watching various bands get up to perform a few songs. Then this group, I guess, gets up to perform. Drums, electric guitar, saxophone, that was it. They start playing in different keys, time signatures, and styles simultaneously, and it was just utterly bizarre. At one point, the guitarist sits down and starts stroking the guitar with a raw carrot, like it was some kind of upright bass, and I just lost it. I look at my date who is glaring daggers at me. At the end of their thing, they bow deeply. One says, "For the uninformed, our music is a commentary on how art cannot be structured," and walked off stage. Needless to say, there was no second date. Back when I was about 19 years old, I met up with a young woman at a coffee shop near the beach. Mere seconds after we had collected our drinks and sat down to talk, a loud series of sounds, a screech, a pop, and a crunch, became audible from outside. It turned out that someone had lost control of their car, plowing it into a nearby tree. A dozen or so people crowded around the window to gawk, and there was a collective gasp as the driver emerged from her vehicle, revealing that her head was bleeding. One of the cafe's employees went to call the paramedics, and my date asked if we should try to help the woman. I was about to respond with my agreement, but the words never came out, largely because they were stifled by barely contained laughter. I'm not a monster, I swear. See, at the exact moment that I had been about to speak, an enormous, almost spherical man on a motorized bicycle had come riding into view. He looked to be about 50, had an expression of intense concentration on his face, and was moving so slowly that it really seemed like he should have toppled over. All of the man's limbs were frozen in place, statue-like, as the dull whine of the vehicle's tiny motor struggled to inch him forward. I don't know why I found that so hilarious, but I couldn't contain my amusement. Worse still, the look of horror on my date's face somehow only made the whole situation funnier. The man on the moped crept by as if in slow motion, looking for all the world like only a powerful psychic effort was keeping him from capsizing. And all the while, I kept right on laughing. We didn't have a second date. God, the way you explained how large the spherical man crept along killed me, made my day. I'm picturing that poor little bike sputtering and praying to Jesus cycle for strength throughout the ordeal. I was once at a food and drink event that was put on by a very famous and eccentric German chef. When it was over, he invited my friends and I back to his farm for an after-party. His farm famously hosts chefs from all over the world who live with him and learn from him. So as a young chef, this was a huge honor. My friend and I had quite a few cocktails, and when it was time for the famous chef to give us directions, he started drawing a map with all kinds of windy dirt roads. He kept saying, "And this road is windy, 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 windy," in his thick German accent while scribbling all over the page, and it just kept going to the point that my friends and I were visibly holding back tears of laughter. We ended up having an amazing time at the farm, but I'm 100% positive the chef did not like us at all after we laughed in his face while he tried to give us directions. I was at a family reunion when my toddler's cousin's face was planted on a coffee table. He was fine, but it was very loud and it caused the adults to flock to him and console him. Meanwhile, 13-year-old I am laughing my ass off and can't stop. I got a lot of dirty looks, which only made me laugh more. I blame America's Funniest Videos for conditioning me to delight at misfortune. Ah well, toddlers don't seem like they're capable of pain unless someone pays attention to them. I've seen little kids bang into things and look around for up to 10 seconds to make eye contact with someone before crying. Our class salutatorian started her speech with, "Today, we are here for our graduated cylinders. I mean our graduation," and went, "Hee hee." And at the time that she chuckled at her own joke, which definitely was a joke, I, a lone patron of comedy in a convention center of thousands, who was already on thin ice, let out a very audible laugh and a woo, and the monitor, which was based on sound, cut to me as I laughed and caught the woo. I genuinely found it funny and could not stop laughing until well after the ceremony finished. I am genuinely laughing, replaying this scenario in my head. In AP Biology, our teacher was giving a lesson with the door open. With how our classrooms were situated at the time, the special ed room was right across the hall. One of the kids began to throw a tantrum and was screaming and moaning at full volume. Well, I guess the screaming sounded awfully like a race car, so a kid in our class began miming shifting gears in the back of the class with really exaggerated movements. Keep in mind, our teacher never once stopped to close the door and just kept teaching as if nothing was happening, and I'm off in the corner dying because some kid is just Tokyo drifting in the back, as well with some autistic kid as the soundtrack. It was just so bizarre in what was normally a pretty boring setting. Absolutely hilarious. You're not allowed to laugh at a funeral, right? Well, we all did, so I guess this counts. At my grandmother's funeral, when the priest asked us all for a moment of silence to remember my grandmother, my 5-year-old brother, amidst all the silence and hushed crying and tears, saw the priest lighting candles and started singing at the top of his lungs, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." He turned one of the saddest moments of my life into the funniest thing I've ever seen. Kid knew you can't spell funeral without fun. My 75-year-oldish grandmother was getting married for the 4th time, and at her wedding, my cousin was going to sing a song. Well, my dad told me and the friend I brought with me under no circumstance laugh. My cousin was not known for her singing capabilities, so she starts this god-awful rendition of Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You." So my friend and I are really trying to keep it together, and one of my uncles turns around and he is beet red from trying not to laugh. My friend and I could barely contain ourselves, but we managed. It's horrible, I know, but my god, we look back and laugh about it. This was in the mid-90s. My cousin is a wonderful person, but singing is definitely not her strong suit. Also, at the irony of it being her 4th wedding and having that song sung. On the other hand, if you're already 75 years old, it's a pretty low bar to clear, assuming that by always you mean for the rest of my life. Incidentally, I think that song is one of the worst that you could choose if you're not a great singer, like me. If you must sing, I would never. At least choose something simple, right? We were 16 and at a friend's birthday party. 4 in the morning, the 8 of us decide to go to the nearby elementary school to run around the roof. 2 of the boys tipped over a porta potty. On the walk home, the cops roll up and make us return to the school to make sure we didn't do any more damage. As we were walking into the front gate, one of the officers had climbed over the fence to look around. As he was climbing back over, his nightstick got caught in the fence, and he fell on his ass next to all of us. I'm surprised no one bit through their lip trying not to laugh. As an added bonus, my friend's mom was so mad at us when she picked us up from school that she wasn't paying attention and backed up into one of the cops' cars. Damn dude, your mom did more damage than we did. One time, during a high school assembly commemorating Anzac Day, we had a veteran come to speak about his experience of war. For context, Anzac Day is like the Australian version of the Veteran Day. As he spoke, the veteran began with this deep, gravelly voice, but partway through his story he coughed and cleared his throat, and began speaking with a significantly higher-pitched voice. High school me found this sudden shift in a voice far funnier than it actually was, and I tried my hardest to hold in my laugh, all the while looking to my classmates to see if anyone shared my feelings. They did not. My classmates were all somber and listening intently as the veteran spoke of the friends that he lost during a battle. It was one of those things where by holding in the laughter, it kind of just grew and grew, and for several minutes I was looking down, shoulders shaking uncontrollably from trying to hold it in. Anyway, after several minutes, I just cracked and just burst into laughter, just as the veteran paused from getting emotional. And as terribly inappropriate as it was just this amazing relief, like finding a place to pee after holding it in for several hours. Teachers did not share my relief and were clearly disgusted, as they should have been. Classmates were perplexed, rightly so, and I was immediately sent outside and absolutely screamed at by my homeroom teacher. I don't care what situation I'm in. If that happened to me, I'd be laughing on the floor. What's the most unhealthy thing that society encourages us to do? Work when we're sick. While many people do have sick days that they can use, they're actively encouraged not to use them. Some even get fired for it, and many do go to work sick. Work in food service, where it's technically illegal to work when sick, but if you dare try and follow that rule, you'll be lucky if you have a job. Yup, which is absolutely disgusting in a couple of ways. Not getting enough sleep or rest. People are encouraged to do so much in life. Work, play, socialize, etc. that most don't get the appropriate amount of rest needed to function properly and maintain good health. Also, not getting enough sleep is a source of pride for many people, and a successful person only needing 3 to 4 hours of sleep is glamorized. I've done the 3 to 4 hours of sleep thing before. It's like living a nightmare. I was always tired, could barely keep my eyes open, and kept randomly falling asleep. It's also extremely dangerous to drive when you're exhausted. That working an 8 to 5 job is really necessary. It's not true for all jobs, but some jobs have huge amounts of downtime and the employees end up just trying to look busy for large parts of the day. It's what I'm doing right now. It's what I do every goddamn day. If I can finish a job in 2 hours, why do I have to just sit here for another 7? You know I'm not doing anything. Why draw out the torture? As an Irishman, the most obvious answer to this is drinking. The social pressure to go on the gargle week in, week out is unbelievable. Australian here. I drink sometimes, but it amazes me how much people expect others to drink. I've been at social events where, upon arrival, people noticed there was alcohol available and went for it. When they saw me not drinking, they asked me why I'm not already drinking. I explain that I don't feel like it at the moment, so they tell me that they have money to buy me a drink if I don't have enough. I can't tell them that I have money, but I don't want to drink that moment enough times to make them understand. They just stare at me like, but alcohol is available. You have to drink. I've worked for a company where free alcohol flowed almost constantly. Drinks on Friday afternoons. Every single event had alcohol. You'd go for team drinks. Good if you like to get absolutely smashed. Not good when you're not a big drinker. There was an unbelievable amount of pressure to drink and party at any and every opportunity. Prioritizing work over well-being. This is something that I've been working hard on for the past several months. When I first joined the workforce about a year and a half ago, I thought that my job was supposed to be my biggest life definer. I would work and figured my identity was what I did for work. However, programming and IT were never my passions, nor are they today. I have 2 jobs now and they pay the bills and more, but I found that my passions and ambitions will never be in my job or career, but in my hobbies. My job is just a way to sustain a lifestyle that allows me to enjoy my hobbies. I've had to learn this the hard way. I'm a software engineer. Coding was my passion until I entered the workforce. Now the last thing I want to do when I leave work is touch a computer. The vast majority of my hobbies do not involve computers at all, and the 2 that do tend to get neglected for periods of time simply because I can't bring myself to look at a computer when I get home sometimes. What I've realized is that for me to be healthy, I need to go to work hard for my 8 hours, and I do enjoy and feel accomplishment with that work, but then go home and do something else. I will never prioritize work above my life again. Tolerate all opinions to the point where we don't critically appraise anything and give everything equal weight. According to a British politician, we've had enough of experts. This is what's wrong with the planet. Basically, indiscriminately respect beliefs and opinions. I indiscriminately respect your right to an opinion, but if your opinion is stupid for all sorts of legitimate objective reasons, then you should be told it's stupid, not coddled or protected from criticism. This is basically how we got Trump. I hate this line of thinking. Trump got the same damn number of votes as McCain did 8 years ago. Clinton just got 10 million less than Obama did because our turnout sucked. The loss was thoroughly preventable, but she didn't get the same support. Consumerism. Having to own the right to stuff to have worth. I have family who are like this. Why are you buying brand name shoes for young kids who will outgrow them in a month? Why do you need to go shopping or eat out every day? Parents tell their children to eat everything off their plates even when they've had enough. This leads to kids developing habits that make them ignore the feeling of being full. Many take this habit to their deathbeds. As adults, they just keep overeating. One of many leading causes of obesity. The underlying reason is good though. To either teach kids that they shouldn't have the privilege to waste food or force them into good nutritional habits, like forcing them to finish vegetables. Parents just need to be more mindful about portion control. I concede that forcing kids to eat vegetables might not be conducive in the long term. Thanks for all the information. But for everyone who can't handle seeing the word privileged without frothing at the bit and thinks that wasting food isn't a concern, well, let's just say that I disagree. Yeah, how is this not obvious? It's not like you've dumped enough food for a 20-year-old male on your 6-year-old's plate, right? Only give him the correct portion with healthy foods included, and then, in that case, having him finish his food is fine, and instills the idea that he cannot simply eat the more appetizing options, but must also eat all the vegetables and fruits. An 8-hour workday, when studies have shown we're really only productive for about 6, we should have more time to actually live life. I spend an inordinate amount of time at the office considering all the stuff I could be doing at home. Then, when you finally get home, there's only 1 to 3 hours that I can commit to housework or home improvement. It's incredibly frustrating because I have spare time, but that's time I have to look busy at work. Eat foods with lots of sugar. We don't really notice it, but most food is loaded with sugar, even if it doesn't need to be because sugar is cheap when compared to other natural products and flavorings. It also adds a lot of weight to the product, so the total weight stays the same while profit increases. Most companies don't care about this anyway, because people like sugary sweet stuff and will probably still buy it if they don't look closely at the sugar content and think carefully. Obviously, this excessive consumption is denounced to us, so a lot of people end up obese or diabetic. I've lived abroad for 5 years and came back to the USA over the break to visit family. Had turkey sandwiches at my sister's where we used some oat nut bread or something that sounded similarly healthy. The bread was sweet. It wasn't supposed to be fruit bread or anything, they just added it for whatever reason, and I couldn't even finish the sandwich. I mean, damn, I can't imagine her oat, but the bread was more healthy than my go-to white bread made only with flour, yeast, and salt, if you dump all that sugar in it. Fellow American here, this is honestly such a huge thing that I wish more people realized. There is so much sugar in the bread, especially the whole grain stuff, and people just don't realize it. I wish there were more proper bakeries for people to buy actual bread from. Anti-intellectualism. There seems to be a trend where ignoring expert opinions is cool. Doctors say to vaccinate my children, but Facebook says otherwise. Doctors are whack, definitely going to side with this Facebook article with 159 shares. Hold in our farts. Crap can lead to gastrointestinal problems. I learned to fart silently. Best to do it somewhere crowded and ignore it. Nobody will know who to blame. Do you see that car that you definitely can't afford on your income? You should definitely get it. I've been told I should just take that vacation because what are credit cards for? I'll answer that credit cards are for paying off every month while milking the company for points. In some ways, it encourages the idea that what you're missing can always be found through consumption of media or buying stuff. I buy media and consume stuff. Am I safe? Only if you physically eat the media, then yes. Also, I realized I misread the question. Sharing everything we do publicly on social media. What amazes me is that so many people willingly reveal their daily itinerary, political opinions, sexual orientation, and God knows what else on social media. If government or police came knocking on our door demanding the same information that we give so freely, we would ask if they had a search warrant. The government doesn't actually have to spy on most of us because we broadcast every part of our lives on our own accord. Worship celebrities. Take the opinions of celebrities seriously, just because they're celebrities. No, that celebrity knows jack crap about economics. Desk jobs. Sedentary lifestyle. Not directly, but we aim more and more towards sitting jobs, engineers, etc., and it's impacting us in ways that we can't even think. It's only bad if you have no other activity in your life. Yes, it's much easier to stay fit and healthy if you're constantly moving around, but having a desk job does not necessarily lead to an unhealthy lifestyle. It just enables one if you're not motivated to do anything else. Yes, I'm looking at you, Bob. You work on the second floor. Take the stairs sometimes. Unfortunately, I can't find it, but I know I read a small study over the summer that said this isn't necessarily true. The point it made, though, was that outside of sleeping, you really shouldn't just sit and do nothing for 8 consecutive hours. It's bad for circulation and the heart, mostly. I think they said getting up every 30 minutes-ish and taking a quick little 3 to 5 minute walk helps though. Driving everywhere. The city I live in is not very pedestrian friendly, and people drive everywhere, even down the block because there are no sidewalks. I live in a major US city with good walkability and public transit. I have a car, but I can get anywhere with the other two. I'm on the train as I type this. A lot of my friends live in the suburbs and drive everywhere. They are amazed at how often I walk, even in inclement weather. It's a little less than a mile to and from the train. I love it, and I find it peaceful to just throw on some headphones and walk. Be romantic in ways that are actually creepy and borderline repulsive. For instance, the movie trope of a guy basically forcing a kiss on a woman who has pretty much told him she can't stand him, or never shown the slightest bit of interest, but this somehow pays off and wins her over. Watching old movies is hilarious for this reason. AMC constantly has a movie on where the lead female finds the lead male repulsive, but in the end, he grabs her and kisses her and they're in love. It's like the lesson they were teaching was, even women who hate you will eventually fall for you if you force yourself upon them. It's certainly not as bad as, say, sweatshops, but the American labor system encourages you to settle for an unchallenging position you're overqualified for, dissuades you from taking time off, and encourages a degree of competition with your colleagues that chips away at your respect for humanity. It almost seems purposefully constructed to restrain personal advancement. I am a strategy consultant who advises public companies. I've worked with chief HR officers on org redesigns, layoffs, etc. Can confirm that some HR organizations and other C-level folk deliberately construct cultures and reward systems and treat employees in a way that make them deliberately neurotic, insecure, or feel the need to overwork themselves. It's always disgusted me. The greatest justice I ever saw was when one of the nastiest HR leads I've ever worked with got sacked out of the blue by the CEO whom this person thought was their best friend. Snakes eat snakes. But yeah, don't ever believe HR is your friend. To be fair, I have worked with some very humane, very good HR people too, so they're not all monsters. Always thought human resources was a creepy dystopian phrase. For men, bottle up our feelings. Men are known to be fearless and tough in the eyes of society, but we're just as fragile as anyone else deep within our hearts, which can drive us suicidal when it reaches critical points. I was always told I was sensitive when I was a kid, and even made fun of because of it. My stepmother was even overheard saying I would turn out gay while her and my father were watching old vacation videos because of it. I was a late bloomer for confidence, go figure, and a virgin till I was 23. But I found an amazing woman to be my wife, and all is well now. She says I'm just enough woman for her and she's just enough man for me. To me, it seems like much of society puts an emphasis and importance on getting married or starting a family, either during college years or shortly afterwards, which I see as a bit of a ball and chain from being able to forward yourself in any career that you may be looking at. Chase after the guy or girl if they've said no once or multiple times. They're just playing hard to get. Go after them. Be romantic. Nah, son, that will earn you a one-way ticket to Crazy Town. Just because you bought them expensive flowers or asked them to dinner doesn't mean that you're entitled to frick them. Nor does it mean that they have to give something in return aside from sex. Exactly. These people act like being nice is a rare thing when you should just be nice in general. No one owes you love no matter how well you treat them. Most? Support the current work culture. You know, how you should be an utter toady to your management and accept whatever abusive policy they put out in the abject hopes that you'll be promoted to a better place or even be management yourself? Crap all over millennials. They're better with money, they know what makes them happy, and they adapt to the ever-changing job/education market. The real problem is it's difficult to market to the majority. Companies with crappy, outdated products, we're looking at you, fabric softener, can't market to them, and then blame them for financial losses. Baby boomers, because these kids value happiness. Is that the whole point? As an Xer in between, I have more respect for the millennial than the boomer. Boomers were the most selfish generation their whole lives. They got away with it because of their numbers. Pretty much, my parents were the ultimate boomers, extremely selfish and entitled. I have a boomer aunt who never had children because they were messy and inconvenient and never did anything to establish a relationship with me. I honestly thought she was dead. A few years ago, she expected me to drop my life and rush to the other side of the country to take care of her because she broke her hip. She was truly baffled when I flat out refused. She hadn't acknowledged my existence for 35 years. I'm not giving up my family for some old person who just wants an unpaid maid. The idea that you have to do something with your life. Not everyone needs to be a doctor or a lawyer. Working a blue-collar job and having hobbies is doing something. I understand striving for longevity in a job, but not everyone has to get a degree and end up in a white-collar career. Blue-collar jobs are necessary. My husband and I farm. We both have college degrees. I remember in high school when teachers would tell some kids that they were too smart to be farmers or mechanics or welders. We need to get past this. Drink juice. It's loaded with sugar. Stay in our bubble. Watch the news, TV, eat processed foods, smoke cigs, drink alcohol, overindulge in shopping, etc. Useless stuff, basically. Why is watching the news useless? Shouldn't we all be keeping up with the world around us? There's a documentary on Netflix called Minimalism. It's quite interesting how terrible our culture has become with buying many things that we don't need. Although I probably couldn't live a minimalism lifestyle, as I like all my things. Watching news and getting informed isn't a bad thing on paper. Unfortunately, most news sources aren't just giving you the news, they're subtly trying to tell you how to feel about the news, instead of drawing your own conclusions. Health at every size. I'm fine with admitting that if you're overweight, you're not healthy, as long as that doesn't equate to we should be able to tell fat people that they're trash. Just tough it out. You're not weak, you're a stronger person than this. About clinical depression or anxiety disorder, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. My family doesn't believe in mental illness. Growing up was rough, and the vices I used to cope left its claw marks. I think this generation is much more educated on this issue, and public awareness is rising. Find your one true love. Get married. Have children. If you don't do these 3 things, you're a failure. Monogamy's not for everyone. Marriage isn't for everyone. Children aren't for everyone. And the worst part is, there's a lot of pressure that if one step of the master plan isn't working, you need to push yourself to the next step, because surely that will fix things. Your relationship isn't working? Get married. Your marriage is falling apart? Better have a kid. Debt. It is at the core of many problems that we face today. Debt causes stress, which has poor effects on health and decision-making. It causes poverty, which in turn leads to poor health. Financial issues are the #1 cause of divorce. It causes people to take riskier positions in life, not just financially, but in other areas as well. It inhibits people from realizing their full potential. It causes depression, encouraging students to take on debt for college and giving students easy access to it not only preys on students who are trying to do what they feel is right, but it also stimulates the increases in college tuition. By flooding the supply of funds with debt, colleges can charge more. Debt is realized into a national problem where everybody feels the effects. If people were encouraged to live the lifestyle that they can afford instead of never being satisfied, I feel like this world would be a much better place. Be the bigger person. In reality, a lot of the time people need to be told about themselves and the crappy thing that they are doing. Not think critically or for ourselves. Today is a very interesting time in the world. Fake news is a problem, but that's been around for ages. People need to learn how to think, not what to think. If you don't know that an article is a fake research, put in the effort. This censoring of fake news is bad because people will need to think less. We're being trained in dissatisfaction. Almost everything in the media, from commercials to politics, is trying to convince us we just happen to have the exact problem they are selling the solution for. Ain't that a coincidence? It's almost as if we invented that problem specifically for you. Your teeth are brown, so get this toothpaste. Your neighbor cooks with more cardamom than your Nana, so vote for me. Your Wi-Fi gives you cancer, so buy this chakra stone. You're too lazy to work out, so buy this sports drink full of electrolytes so that you can at least feel as if you went to the gym. Meanwhile, actual problems, the ones you can't solve by liking stuff on Facebook, go largely unaddressed. At least until we find some money to be made by fighting female genital mutilation, comforting the dying, or actually teaching children instead of coaching them to not fail standardized tests. Until then, it's much more important to give us phones and social media accounts to spoon-feed us bespoke, unfulfilled dreams. Don't forget to sign in to enable the Buy Now option. And all almost exclusively for money, as if dying rich is so great. Coffee. You're not a real adult unless you have a crippling caffeine addiction that you spend $2 a day on and get physical side effects from if you try to break. Teaching boys or men to never cry. Crying is great, and keeping it all inside can be detrimental to your mental and physical health. There seems to be this push for body positivity, in which it pushes people to be comfortable in their own skin. I am not one for body shaming, but it has gotten to the point where people who are overweight and even morbidly obese are told that they don't have any flaws and there are no health risks of being overweight. It's one thing to accept some of your flaws and know that you may never have a flat tummy, but not loving your body enough to take care of it is upsetting. Hey, you see that really attractive model over there? You should do everything you possibly can to look like him or her. Eating the kind of crap people eat. Seriously, people, eat a vegetable. Go to college. A lot of people aren't college material. They don't need to go, let alone get saddled with crippling debt. Even if they graduate, a lot of them get degrees that won't pay for themselves. Learning is good, but if that's what it's all about, there are libraries and free online courses. Quit sending clueless 18-year-olds to high school part 2 to get cement shoes while they have no idea what they're signing up for or what they want to do. For my age group, I'm 22. I'd have to be going out every chance you get, getting super wasted and spending tons of money to do so. And if you don't want to, your friends don't seem interested in keeping your friendship. Guess who has no friends? Me. For some reason, when a little boy is bullying or irritating a little girl, we tell them it's because the boy likes the girl. In reality, it's giving the girl a new thought pattern of, oh, he's abusing me, it must be because he really likes me, deep down, causing them to act way different when it comes to toxic relationships with the opposite sex. Eating meat, dairy, and ounces of sugar every day. Opiates, alcohol, and mild amphetamines, Ritalin, Adderall. Valuing money above relationships, having an us versus them team mentality, and being ashamed of living with your parents. I'd say top 2. Uphold gender norms, that men should repress their feelings and not talk about them, etc. Consumerism, that you should just go buy a new one rather than try to fix the broken thing, or that you should buy a giant house even if you have no real practical use for it, and that it's fair that wealth is concentrated rather than more evenly shared. Facebook. We are not meant to live our lives in fishbowls. I recently permanently deleted mine and it has felt like a giant weight off my back. No more keeping up with the Joneses. I'm sure there's some sort of correlation between that and the recent spikes in depression. To live just to work. A vast majority of people hate their jobs but perpetuate this mentality because they think, well, I'm miserable, so everyone else should be too. Of course, this isn't to say that everyone should just stop working, but everything is in moderation. There are very few jobs that actually require being there 24/7. It wouldn't really be that big of a deal if most of our society shut its work doors down at 4 p.m. and people tended to their homes and personal lives the rest of the day. Think of a 6-hour workday. People would be so much less stressed out. 2 3-hour segments with a break in between to go get groceries, lunch, etc. Having kids without comprehending the extent of the responsibilities involved. Yeah, let's just marry off these clueless men and women struggling with career anxiety, depression, and existential crises. When they have kids, they will know what true responsibilities are. What could go wrong? Consuming outrageous amounts of sugar. Fancy a Coke? That's a third of your daily recommended amount. Fancy a sandwich? Those 2 slices of white bread will see you for 5 grams of sugar, or 1/5 of a woman's daily recommended amount. Ketchup? Pretty sugary. Canned soup? Sugary. Baked beans? Sugar. Orange juice? Yep. It would honestly be easier to list off items that aren't overloaded with sugar than those that are. It's extremely hard to throw together a casual meal with basic things from a supermarket that you'd naturally assume are relatively healthy, that aren't in fact more sugary than you'd expect them to be. Even tomato sauce isn't safe. Growing up, adults are called childish for playing and having fun, and then they end up sitting on the couch watching TV for the rest of their lives. If every adult played for an hour a day, obesity would be much less of a problem. I'm 31. Play and we'll get looks. If my kids are out riding their bikes, I bring my BMX bike along. Try to hop bushes, bar spins, crash, get up, repeat. They also want to try and do this as they get older/stronger. Yet I am seen as a fool. That for a certain amount of time you have to be held down and demeaned and talked down to because of some bureaucratic crappy organization. That young people just have to put up with it until they are older. No, you don't. Whoever you work for shouldn't push and pull you around just for the sake of it. It's not right. Respect the people that work for you. Very binary thinking. You're either for something or against it. Democrat or Republican. Religious or not. Why can't I be in the middle of something? There are some things I'm conservative about and some things I'm liberal about. All this does is put people against each other. George Washington warned us of this. US society expects people to place their jobs above all else in many places. Regardless of occupation and how well the company treats you, mine treats me well, I get no questions asked sick days, lots of vacation, etc. You have to work hard and oftentimes with a lot of stress. This might be true in lots of countries, but having been in the workforce for 2 years now and seeing how it transforms people, it's definitely not healthy. To stick it out and not be a quitter. There is something wrong here. If a relationship is a poison, quit the relationship. If your workplace is toxic, go find another job. It may be unhealthy to just stick it out.
Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.